Hello, everybody. Welcome to GrindHaus on 42nd Street. I am Gray.
And I'm Wolfman.
And today's episode is going to be an interesting episode. But first, I just want to bring up a couple little news items for the channel. Obviously, this is under the Serial Killers Academy, and we are working on our new schedule. So one of the reasons GrindHaus is being made right now, not just to have more content for all of our listeners, because we talked about movie reviews and a movie episodic podcast as well. But we're starting it earlier because we're figuring out a set schedule to be able to release stuff on every certain day of the week, so you know when to tune into certain things. So the next episode of the Serial Killers Academy will be recorded next week. And then this week, there will not be a Wine and Crime live stream on Wednesday. Instead, we will have a new episode of This Week in Serial Killer History, as well as I will post links on our social media accounts, our YouTube or our Facebook, Instagram, stuff like that, for the Twitch streaming site that Wolfman is going to be live streaming.
And we can put a poll up on Facebook for a game.
That's what I was.
We can play. Yeah, because there's a lot of hard games to have. Yeah.
So perfect.
Yeah, we didn't discuss that before, but I figured I'd throw that in. Sorry.
No, it's all good. For you, what would you want to play, like personally?
Well, I don't really care. There's a ton of stuff. Like, I haven't played Alien Isolation yet. It's been sitting in my queue for many, many years now. Games to get through. I mean, you have 7 Days to Die. We get the fun. We have Friday the 13th. We have Dead by Daylight. We'll put up a poll, see what people want to see get played.
Yeah, like a good selection of horror, thriller, suspense video games.
Yeah. And there are also games that the viewers can play with us if they want to. They can message me. We can, get people in and interact and have a little fun as a community.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like, if I know, like, a lot of people might not play it anymore, but like I used to play Left 4 Dead, and it was always more fun playing with people you knew, other than people that just random people on servers. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I was saying we have World War Z. It's just like Left 4 Dead. If anyone hasn't played that yet, I personally think it's a slightly better Left 4 Dead, but.
See, I have to play it because I saw the trailer and I'm like, man, this is where it's at.
Well, it doesn't have the humor, just real quick. It doesn't have the humor as Left 4 Dead, but it has an upgrade system. There's different characters and other things and like a skill tree that Left 4 Dead was missing. Where if a third one was released, they would put in, and Left 4 Dead 3 would be better, I think, because of the humor aspect.
It's more in depth. I feel like with Left 4 Dead, it was like level based. It's like you're picking a scene from a movie and you got to get from here to here and that's it. I didn't feel like immersed in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's what this one is too. It's basically the same, but it's supposed to take place in some of the areas from the novel or technically the movie. So it takes place in New York, Jerusalem, Russia. There was another one. I can't think of what it is off the top of my head, but you get my point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if you guys are interested in that, we're going to leave links up on the social media, and we're going to make a poll so you guys can, pick one of the games or, even leave a comment for a game you'd like to see in the future. We'll see if we can get our hands on it or whatever. The next episode of the Serial Killers Academy podcast, you know what? I had lost my phone, but it's okay. I don't want to say who the killer is, but I will say it will be the first female that we are covering for the Serial Killers Academy, and she looked like a sweet old lady. That's all I'm going to say. Y'all can do your own research on it.
Is it Aunt Jemima? Because she kills millions of people through diabetes every year.
No, Aunt Jemima and Walter Brimley. I'm here to talk to you about diabetes.
Sorry, couldn't help myself on that one.
If you checked out the very first episode of the GrindHaus, make sure you go on YouTube and check out the accompanying video. It's not video of me and Wolfman. It's just like a basic little slideshow, pertaining to things that we talk about. And there's a few moments in there that like had me like not just like chuckle. Like it wasn't like I was looking at it, like I laughed out loud. Like I didn't think we were that funny.
Yeah, I unfortunately didn't put slides or something like for every second of the video, but there's like movie covers and there's a couple pictures of other things, like maybe a meme here and there
Yeah.
that was pretty funny. I thought, and obviously I'll get better at that until we get real video. But for the first couple, we're gonna have some entertaining. It should be a little bit entertaining, even if you did listen to the podcast previously on Spotify. You should like the YouTube.
Yeah,
release
and
also.
it's put together because like the first episode we split, where this is an hour and 40 minutes. So if you didn't want to have a split version, if say you're at home and you're doing something arts and crafts related, whatever, and you just want something going in the background, just pop it on and give it a listen all the way through. So I got a new shipment of shirts in today. I posted those on Facebook. We got the limited run Charles Manson playing the acoustic guitar Polaroid picture, and I got the Jeffrey Dahmer "If You Can't Beat 'Em, Eat 'Em" shirt. That's also limited quantity. Oh yeah, and actually, I special made that for one of our fans who's like a 13-year-old boy in Austin, Texas. And he was like on Instagram and he liked all of our stuff and commented. I was like, oh, that's cool. And I was like, you know what? Like, if you ever want a shirt, let us know. And he was like, oh, I'd really like a Jeffrey Dahmer shirt. I was like, all right. So I got this one made up. And he was like, oh, just to let you know, like, I'm 12 or 13. And I'm like, hey, you better ask your mom if you could be receiving stuff in the mail. And she like through his account or whatever, tagged an account, whatever, however that works. She was like, yeah, no, it's fine. I let him watch the documentaries, and I was like, all right, cool. Because I was that age when I was really getting into the more realistic stuff. Like I was already into horror, but like serial killer stuff, I was about that age, The giveaways, all that stuff is packed up, ready to be shipped. So our winners will be receiving their stuff very soon. Shipping to England is ridiculously expensive, but it's worth it. And that's pretty much it for the news pertaining to the channel. For today, I said we have a very interesting topic, and if you're into horror movies and you like all of them like we do, or most of them, that there's going to be like certain types. Like Wolfman said last week, he's always been into like the monsters, right?
Yeah. I mean, I love myself a good monster movie. I mean, you can't go wrong with them, whether that's scary or funny or a little bit of both. Whether they're zombies or just like critters or ghoulies or what I mean. You name it. I mean, it's always fun.
And see, and I always gravitated towards like the slashers. Now there's monsters out there. Like I would say Leatherface, even though he's human, he's a monster. Like that guy is a monster.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's a monster for a whole different reason, but yeah.
Right.
I think all serial killers are monsters. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean for what they're doing, they can be considered monsters. But I'm actually saying like Jason Voorhees and Leatherface, I would consider those guys like being as big and burly and be able to like take damage and keep coming at you, compared to like the Scream Ghost. Like the Scream Ghost is not a monster; it's some regular guy in a costume. You know what I mean?
That's a whole nother. Right. Yeah, I know what you mean.
So the other kind of horror movie, or genre, if you will, would be your realistic serial killer horror movies. And that's what we're kind of covering today.
Today, with a realistic horror movie, we're covering Maniac from 1980. It was also, depending on where you're at, was released in 81. Yep. And Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer from 1986.
And we will also be talking about the remake of Maniac, which came out in 2012.
And this just like brings a whole new genre, like we were talking about. I mean, there's other movies that fall in the same category. I mean, like movies like American Psycho, From Hell, Frailty, which is another personal favorite of mine. We definitely need to get into that one. Murder Party, that's one of my favorite Halloween fun serial. Like, it's actually serial group, and then
I
Otis,
don't.
which is a very good comedy. Like, we'll get into that in a second. And Strangeland. Those are just other movies I
Yeah.
would put in this category. So Murder Party, though, I know you were gonna say you probably never heard of that one, right?
Yeah. Never even like crossed my internet
Yeah,
screen. You know.
it's on Netflix right now. Just a short synopsis. I would like to do a whole thing on this around Halloween time because it's one of
Sure.
my I watch every Halloween. But this lonely, I don't know if he's like a police officer or a security guard or whatever. He's just like a single guy, doesn't seem to have many friends, and he runs across this random invitation on the floor of the street as he's walking home, and then he ends up showing up there, and it's a bunch of art students that need to make a video for their thing, and they think they're just going to kill a person, so they all have their different ways they want to kill someone, and the movie just it's very gory,
Takes off from there.
hijinks, takes off. You know, that's not really spoiling anything, you know, but
No, no, no.
it's a fun movie.
Yeah,
And
so
then-
definitely, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, and then there's
Before-
Otis. Sorry, Otis is this overweight pizza delivery guy. You know, glasses, shaved head, like you know, just your typical movie loser in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like he delivers
yeah,
pizza. He's got to be 40 years old.
He's
you
your
know,
Melvin.
Yeah, yeah. So and like it stars Daniel Stern from Chud, Home Alone. Likes a couple other characters you would know, like if you've seen them. You know, I can throw their names out right now, but this is all last second. I didn't pull. I'm sorry. I didn't
Yeah,
pull
yeah.
names up,
No,
but
no, no.
it's a fantastic movie. It's very funny. It's super gory, especially the way it's shot. But Otis steals women basically and murders them. Like it's and he kidnaps them and he lives out his little fantasies. So I mean, it's an overall good movie. It's a quality pick. Now, Murder Party, I think I don't know if I mentioned it's on Netflix right now. So if anyone wants to watch it, they can.
One thing that we're going to have to start doing is when we go over when we name drop movies that we would want each other to see, and if other people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We should go on Facebook and our social media and just leave not even links, but just like put the names out, let people go out, see if they want to see it. I mean, we might have people who've seen the movies already and they're like, oh my god, I love that movie, I can't wait till you guys cover it, but there's going to be movies that I haven't seen and you haven't seen, and that's the beauty of doing something like this, is getting to know new stuff. And
Yeah.
that's why at the end of this episode, this episode will be a two-parter. At the end of this part, we are going to have a new weekly series. It's going to be called Gore's Pick of the Week. And it's hosted by Gorely Girl. Actually, her derby name is Gorely Girl 138. And I say it well, you know what? I'll save it for the intro because I gave her a little intro for when we play that later in. But every week during our GrindHaus on 42nd Street, we're going to toss it over to her and she's going to recommend, her pick of the week. Maybe it's music, maybe it's a movie, documentary, graphic novel, book, anything that she recommends. And I would recommend you check out her recommendations because she's never steered me wrong in the entirety that I've known her.
Yeah, she has good picks. I mean, it's we were in the other episode we were talking about how a mutual person. She's the mutual person that brought us together. So me and her have talked movies all the time at different roller derby events, which is how I end up meeting you through this. So I mean, we're both in a way when our brains are working like encyclopedias of great movie, movie
between all
reviews
three of
and
us.
ideas. Yeah.
And I'll say, I was going to save it, but I'll say it now. Like, Gore is my sister. So you got Gray and Gore and Wolfman, and all three of us, we all like horror movies. We all like different kinds of horror movies, and probably between all three of us, we've seen 99% of what's out there. So one of us is going to know that little B movie from 1975 that only hit 14 screens that you think you're the only one who knows about. One of us probably have watched it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Gore knows a lot more of the newer, like B movies.
Yeah.
I've kind of stepped away from a little bit from horror movies to a certain extent because
Newer stuff I have.
yeah, there's certain stuff. Certain stuff catches my eye. I'm not into the movies like I used to be because I don't feel the heart and soul of horror is in it anymore. But that's a whole nother podcast on itself. Also,
Oh, yeah.
there.
Oh yeah, no, I think
certain things
a full episode can be given to how CGI has ruined horror movies.
I love practical effects. I really do. And
Practical.
You're right. Yep.
100% practical effects, and I can show you practical effects that were filmed over 30 years ago, and they blow the pants off of this CGI bullshit that is getting released every day. It does, but you know what? Like, instead of spending the money on, the effect, because like CGI does cost money, but for the amount of time it takes, it is cheaper. Now, if you spent that much time on the effects, you would actually get a better product, and you might actually get more people interested in what you're doing. In return, you're making more back, you know?
No, I agree. I mean, you also, there's the whole, with practical effects, you have one shot to get it done. Otherwise, it costs double the money and a lot more time, where CGI, they go that way. But, like I said, we can all add that later before we get too much into a rabbit hole. Put that
I do want you to kick off with Maniac, because now what you just said, some effects can only be done one time.
All right.
You
know. I know exactly what we're talking about, and we will get into that. And it is a very amazing effect. I almost, when we release this on YouTube, I almost don't want to put a picture of it just to like force people to go see it. Like, I'm conflicted on whether I'm going to put something up there or not. I might put like the picture right before the effect. You know what I mean? And then make people go see what actually, happens.
Let's all right, talk about the movie, and when we get to that part, we'll talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I was good with that. All right, so our movie Maniac, in 1981 release. Its director is Joe Spinell. He also wrote the movie and stars as Frank, our main serial killer in the movie. Tom Savini did the special effects, and he's also the man in the scene that we were going to talk about. If anyone doesn't know who Tom Savini is, you really need to look him up. I mean, he's done some of the best special effects across the board for a ton of movies, including some of the Night of the Living Dead movies, Friday the 13th, the original. I mean, you can go down the list. He's amazing.
And if you want to talk about what he's done, Greg Nicotero, the number one name in effects today, was his student. So between Nicotero and Tom Savini, you've definitely seen their work.
Yeah, I mean, he's got one of, like, I think 2 schools in the entire U.S., and it's the top school out in Pittsburgh. I'm pretty sure it's still there and still running. I mean, I wouldn't see why it's not. Actually, at one point I almost wanted to go there, but I can't draw worth a shit. So it kind of hinders. It kind of hinders. Like, I have all these creative ideas, and I just can't. You got to draw a lot of stuff out in order to make stuff, and it just never panned for me. So the movie originally was given an X rating, which was eventually dumbed down to certain releases as an unrated flick. So that's how it got put out in theaters. So it was heavily edited for rated R in the South, and was released in New York as an unrated movie. So the MPA cracked down hard on this movie. It was one of the, I can't say one of the first, but as a slasher movie, it was definitely in the well, not, you know what I mean, serial killer slasher type, the way he is in this.
And just to let people know, in New York, where this movie was shown the most was at the GrindHaus theaters on 42nd Street.
Correct. It was released in New York on January 81.
Yep, this is the kind of movie that you would see when you go to the GrindHaus on 42nd Street. these are the types of movies that, I mean, they played everything, but this is what you could easily expect.
Just some two boring stats, because we'll get into this later. But Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 39%. IMDb has a 6.5 out of a 10. Now, we'll go into our personal ratings later, but that's just some of the boring stuff. So, all right, so the movie is going to open up when it starts as there's a couple on a beach. They camped out overnight, just like typical horror movie, couple on the beach. You know how it is. They wake up, everything's all nice and whatnot. You get the backdrop of the water. So then she sends the man out to go find driftwood. I know the beaches are different there than they are here because they ain't find driftwood on the East Coast beaches. I can tell you that.
No.
So while he's out, she gets murdered and he gets murdered. I mean, it's not a crazy in-depth into scene or whatnot, but it just sets the tone of the movie. They never show the killer. It just, right off the bat, within like 5 minutes, people are being murdered already.
Yeah.
So then they cut to a guy waking up out of bed, and he is like, this is now Frank. It turns out this is our serial killer. And he is the grungiest, grimiest looking guy ever. I mean, he looks like Ron Jeremy and Edward James almost had a baby. And he's like really goddamn creepy looking. And then as he's getting out of bed, obviously he's like in like a wife beater and all gross. You see all these mannequins like all around the room. So you can just tell like he's off. You know what I mean? Like they look like these like dolls everywhere. I mean, it's very stereotypical, I guess, now to have the room set up like that. But then, it was still different. He has a shrine on his wall to a lady, which you'll find out who it is later on. It ends up being his mother. And then there's a mannequin that has a scalp attached to her head, so it looks like he's been cutting women's hair off. Like, I mean, it just sets up the whole tone of this movie that is going to be gory. It's different, especially the time that this came out. Like, there wasn't many things like this at all.
No, and like by like the small details, like it was a scalp, not a wig, because they had, because of the effects, they kept part of the actual scalp with the hair, with blood, like it's a scalp.
Down. Yep.
Right. So, yeah, it's Look, I'm gonna tell you, for a budget of $350,000 and to be shot mostly guerrilla style, which means they didn't have a lot of permits, I think the movie came out well.
Oh, without a doubt, definitely. Like, just the way the whole opening too. Like I said, like the way they opened it, the pacing of the movie was really perfect. I actually thought it started out really good.
Yeah.
And then how creepy they made it seem with the whole room and everything, then the way they cut the different shots. So it was almost like he was waking up for his daily routine. And then, they have him just walk in the streets after he gets up. And then he picks up a prostitute. They go to a motel. The scene plays out just, I don't even want to describe it too much. The scene plays out super weird and creepy, exactly the way you want it. One thing leads to another. They're in the bed making out, and then he just loses it. And he just starts choking her, like, violently. But the one thing I actually didn't like about this scene is while he's choking her, the woman actress that he's dealing with, she doesn't seem like she's being choked. Like, she's talking perfectly to him and telling him, like, why are you doing this? Stop, whatever. With no, gagging and nothing. Like, it's probably one of the worst choking scenes, like, I've ever seen in a movie. Like, it's pretty bad. But they keep going to this shot of him, of her point of view to him, and he's sweating profusely, like he's into this scene, like I said, with his looks the way he is, I hope she's not under him, because that shit's probably getting in her mouth. That's probably disgusting.
Well, but let's just get one thing, perfectly clear. Joe Spinell was not your standard B-movie exploitation movie actor. Okay, this guy was in movies from The Godfather and the Rocky sequels. He won the Oscar for Best Picture. No, Francis Ford Coppola. Sorry, he won. I read the wrong part. But yeah, obviously, Godfather won Oscar for Best Picture, Actor, Adapted Screenplay, and he wasn't just like a throwaway character. Like, he was in that movie, and the Rocky sequels, and Godfather 2, And I mean, the guy was. He worked with Pacino. He worked with Marlon Brando. He worked with Richard Gere. The guy was an actor, and I feel like everybody else in the movie was basically, "Hey, are you doing anything? Could you spend a day filming something with us?"
Yeah. Yeah,
That would be like
definitely see
me
that.
acting, yeah, with like Robert De Niro and Raging Bull, and they're like, "Hey, shit stain, can you hold this punching bag?" Like, yeah, whatever. You give me $5 and a hoagie, I'll do it. You know, like that's what I feel like the cast is. Besides Tom Savini as Disco Boy, I feel like everyone else kind of phoned it in.
I mean, I've technically been paid more to be in a music video, so like,
Yeah,
and
I
then
mean,
these people got paid for like a whole movie scene. So
yeah. I mean, depending on the hoagie and where it's from,
yeah,
obviously I'm not going to take a Subway sandwich, you know.
yeah. So
So,
he kills her. He cuts off her scalp, brings it home. Like it's just a really disturbing scene the way they did it, and then also a really bad scene at the same time. Like if you watch it, see what I'm talking about. And then like now this is where like it starts to pick up, and you really realize how deranged he is. Because as he's mounting her scalp on this mannequin, he's having this crazy inner monologue with himself, and you like you just see how like separated from the world he is in his own
yeah.
head. Like
Oh, yeah.
he he's definitely not someone that should be loose on the streets, and there's a ton of people like this to this day out in this world.
Oh, yeah. Go listen to the inner monologue that American Psycho, the inner monologue that he has to himself in like the intro of the movie and stuff. And it heavily inspired from scenes like this, the inner monologue that this guy has with himself. It gives you an uneasy feeling.
So as crazy as he is, he's definitely sort of smart. He's not like a typical blundering like criminal serial killer, because he has like his whole little. You see him packing his little kill kit now for like the next scene, which is the one we were talking about earlier. He starts packing this violin case with his shotgun, and it's in pieces. It breaks down nicely. He has ammo. He's got this World War I or II bayonet. I mean, it's like got to be like a 12-inch blade on it. I mean, it's huge. All packed in there. He's got his stuff. So he has a method to his madness. Like he's crazy, but he's still smart. He's not, you know, well, I mean, he's not like genius level, but he's still a pretty
No,
smart
but
guy.
yeah, he's not mentally insane. Like
Yeah,
if
yeah.
someone like him got caught and they went to trial and he tried pleading insanity, he would not get it.
No, I mean, he's definitely crazy, but he's definitely not pleading insanity.
Mental.
No.
Right.
Just a quick note before I get into the car scene here. Like the music is like your typical Casio keyboard, but it's like suspenseful and fits perfectly. I don't know about you,
I
but
love
I have a yeah, I love when they have that when it fits the movie. There's a time and a
and
place for the movie, and this is definitely one of them.
that is the one thing I will give, and I'll talk about it more later. But the
Yeah.
one thing I will give the Maniac remake is the gentleman who scored that movie goes by one name, Rob. Motherfucker thinks he's Cher or something. But the music in the remake is perfect. Literally, it suits the movie and it puts you back in that time period. And this soundtrack is very good too. And so was Henry. I just think movies from this time period, some of my favorite soundtracks came out of this time.
It was just simple and fit. Sometimes you didn't need a whole orchestra in the background. You know what I mean? Like playing, this crazy symphony of music in the back. In the
Yeah,
back. You just needed something simple, to the point. It fit
and
the
sets the
'80s
mood.
vibe. It was kind of
Yep.
grimy, like to me, like that whole. It just works.
Oh
So
yeah.
now we get into the car death scene. This is pretty much the infamous kill in the movie. Like
This is
there's
the
other
one
stuff
that
happens, but this is the one.
this is the one that people from the rating board said drove it over. Like, yeah, the movie is bad, and the movie had protesters, but it was for the entire movie. but the rating board had an issue with this one specifically. But it took them so much work to do it, they weren't willing to cut it from the movie.
Yeah, well, it was beautifully shot too, in my opinion, just the way they did it. So, all right, so now we go back into talking about Tom Savini and his practical effects. He's also the man in the driver's seat
Disco
of the
boy.
car. So what happens is, all right, so we set up the scene. He's walking. There's a couple. I forget if they were walking to the car or whatever, or if they were in the car talking, and they're like, "Oh, hey, you want to get in the back seat?" You know what I mean? Like, I forget.
Yeah, they're walking out of a disco.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yep.
So then they hop in the back seat. They're doing their thing. They're getting on. Then you see Frank, him just kind of walking by, and he's now got his face pressed up against the window, watching them, and the girl sees it, and she freaks out. Obviously, Frank disappears. Just like it should be. She's all worried. Mm-hmm. They want to keep going, and finally, she talks to them. So they get out of the car. Like it's not like cars now, like it has a single door, but it's like a back seat, so they literally have to get out of the car, so you're expecting something to happen. There's all this suspense now, like it's building up, but they get into the car, they get the doors shut, they start the car, and then they flip the lights on, just like most movies would be, and then there's Frank just sitting there in front of it, and they're both like in shock, and in this like slow motion with the crappy Casio keyboard in the back, Frank jumps up on the hood, shotgun in hand, and it's just the way it's filmed from the car was just beautifully done. He gets on the car and he shoots Tom Savini's head and like literally blows it to pieces. I mean, you get
through the
full
windshield
shot from the back seat.
Yep. Like I would say, like 4 feet away, barrel to head with the windshield in between.
Yeah, definitely.
And now, you know who pulled the trigger on that in real life was Savini.
Yeah.
Because he straight up said, "Look, we got one chance to do this. I'm doing it." And people have asked him, "What was it like to shoot yourself in the head?" He was like, "Well, I kind of know what to expect now, but," and it's funny because it's an easy effect. And that's why I don't understand like the cost. It's like you get a watermelon, you kind of make it the size of a head, you put your latex mask over it, you put some hair and you put some fake blood, and you shoot it.
Was it actually a watermelon they used? Because it seemed like I wasn't sure.
It was a watermelon, but they filled it with other stuff. Besides the watermelon
it doesn't
stuff.
seem like a watermelon, but the way a watermelon explodes, I don't know about any of you out there in podcast land, but I've actually broken a watermelon up pretty good. With a sledgehammer, trying to pretend I was Gallagher. So,
sure,
watermelons are one of the, one of those mediums that definitely explodes very nicely. So that's, from 3 or 4 feet away with a shotgun hitting a watermelon like that, it's pretty much exactly what I would think someone getting shot in the face would look like. I mean, the head just exploded perfectly. There's not much more to say about it. It was filmed right. There's a nice little slow motion of him jumping up on the car and then aiming the gun down to the windshield. It was just a really good scene, and it really triggered everyone. Critics hated that scene, but like a lot.
It's a beautiful thing, and like the one thing from like a little behind the scene thing is earlier I said the film was shot guerrilla style. Guerrilla style filmmaking is basically what me and Wolfman would do if we were to film a movie. We're not paying for permits. We're not getting permission for where we're going to film. We're going to do what we can, how we can. Can you imagine hearing a shotgun go off in New York City at 4 a.m, and then everyone has to pack up and scatter?
Actually,
well, not on 42nd Street. As
at the time of the year.
You know what, dude? We should make. You know how people fall asleep with like noise machines, like ambient noises. We should make a 42nd Street noise machine where it's just like prostitutes moaning and like dope heads passing out and like gunshots. Like, oh, this takes me back.
You want to buy some crack?
You're like, did I dream that I smoked crack, or did I wake up and smoke? No, I couldn't have woke up because I wouldn't have went back to bed.
So basically, you want to play taxi driver, basically.
Yeah, that's fair. So, what happens to the disco girl?
Well, I mean, she gets murdered. I mean, there's nothing crazy. I mean, she gets shot with a shotgun. You know, she's panicking, fleeing for her life after that, but it doesn't hold the candle to,
What just
you know,
happened?
the guy
Yeah.
getting shot.
Yep.
Yeah. It doesn't. It's just generic. She's begging for her life. Yada
Yep.
yada yada. He shoots her. I don't mean to play it down so much, but after that, I mean, it really is like I actually almost wouldn't have cared if they didn't show her die and just showed him taking her
Yeah.
scalp. You know what
And
I
like
mean?
you said, like even if the screen was fading to black and you just heard a gunshot, I would have put two and two together. Like, oh yeah, she didn't make it either. Because after that,
Yeah.
that was your money shot. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I won't say it like ruined the scene, but it's like you're so in shock after seeing that, especially if you don't watch movies like this before, or especially if you're in that time of you know that decade
Oh
then
yeah.
seeing this, like you're now desensitized to the next kill in a way, or not necessarily desensitized.
You're still
yet,
in
but you know what I
shock.
mean?
Yeah,
Still
you're
in
not
shock.
processing.
You're still processing. Yep.
Great scene.
So yeah, and then now the movie skips a little bit. You know, he gets his scalp, and then now they show him in Central Park just kind of walking around, which you sort of picture him doing, but not at the same time. You know what I mean? Like you picture him walking around at night being a creeper, but not during the day. And he sees this woman taking pictures in the park, and he just kind of and well, she's just careless in general and just leaves her camera bag laying next to a tree. So he kind of strolls over and gets her address off the camera bag. You know, you're not going to do that in today's world. I mean, I guess you know, bad people existed then, but you don't think of it like you do now. You know
Right.
what
Well,
I
I
mean?
think if it was a normal criminal, they would have done what we all expect them to do. But I don't.
Take the
But
bag.
Frank's motives
Yeah.
aren't of theft and
Yeah.
robbery. You know, he's way further than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I don't think you see that like you do now. Like, because I remember as a kid, like our luggage or bags in general, even like our school bags, our mom put our address and
Yeah.
names on
Yep.
everything. You know, so this lady had her name and address like on her bag. Like people don't do that anymore, I don't think. I mean, maybe they
Maybe
do,
a name.
but a lot of stuff was made back then, like to have these little tags
Yes.
attached to them. You know, it was kind of a thing of the time period. You
Yeah.
know, and it kind of sucks because now you're left in suspense of what's going to happen to this lady. Like they don't go back into this until a little bit later in the movie. So now you're sort of thinking like, all right, so this is like our main girl in the
Right.
movie.
It's a setup
You
for
know what
something.
I mean? Like what's going to
Yeah.
happen to her?
Yep.
Yeah. It's just like a big setup. You expecting something to happen because Frank actually confronts a little girl initially on her bike, and that's when you see her take a picture, and he notices that he got his picture taken by her, and he lets the little girl go. You don't know if Frank's gonna kill her or anything. You know, it's a little suspenseful moment, and they just kind of leave you on a cliffhanger there. So then, in typical movie fashion, especially, I mean, I sound like a cliche saying this, but this movie hits a lot of cliches. Like, especially now, like, I don't know how many of them, I mean, because there's so many B movies, especially horror, like, and, you know, slasher,
But how many?
murderous, you know, serial
But how
killer,
many were
whatever.
cliches when the movie was made compared to how many became cliches
Yeah.
after?
We
Right.
see now.
Yep.
Yeah. Because now we're going into another cliche, because now we're at the one with the
Yes.
hospital scene with the two nurses. So the movie fades into these two nurses sitting on the stoop of the hospital or the front entrances talking, smoking a cigarette. I mean, how many times have we seen
Yeah,
that in the
absolutely.
movie? Where now like they're waiting, you know, the one nurse is waiting for a ride home and the other one goes and walks off. You know what I mean? Or goes and walks to the bus station
subway,
or whatever.
yeah.
I mean, I've seen like 3 or 4 movies in the past like year or two, whether they're old or new, that had the same situation in it, you know. So nurse one gets picked up by her boyfriend or husband or whatever. Excuse me, her boyfriend or husband or whatever, and takes off. And then nurse number 2 starts walking nonchalantly. And then here comes Frank out of nowhere,
Yep.
just conveniently everywhere, and you know, all the time. And she kind of notices him following her a little bit. So she picks up her speed. Like I said, it's very very cliche. Next thing you know, she's running from Frank and ends up in a subway station. And I mean, there's nothing crazy about the scene. It's just the fact that how cliche it was. So now she's hiding in the subway station, and Frank, eventually, right when you think everything's all right, she might have got away, and Frank just like skewers her with that bayonet that we were talking about earlier. I mean, it goes right through her back and right out her stomach.
This is the only part of the movie.
She's done.
This is the only part of the movie that made me feel like another 80s slasher. Like, the rest of the movie feels original, but this scene specifically made me feel like I was watching a B exploitation movie. Now, granted, it is a B exploitation movie, but it doesn't feel that way until you have to sit through the sequence.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of skirting the lines because it opened up that way. It opened up like a slasher, also. So, it's kind of, it feeds on a little of both. It's got slasher and serial killer all at the same time. You know what I mean? It crosses both boundaries. So I mean, now we cut back to so here's another, and now we're coming into another part of the movie where I have an issue a little bit. So the whole scene with now the new girl. So it cuts back to his home, and he's wearing a smoking jacket with an ascot, and he has these dark sunglasses, and he's like sounding and looking like Vincent Price.
Yeah, he still looks like a greaseball.
Like Frank. Yeah, but he looks like a greaseball, fat, gross version of Vincent Price. Like, you would see him in, House on Haunted Hill or something. Like, you know what I mean? And Frank, his whole persona now changes. Now, I don't like how they changed his persona, and we're going to get into how it changed a little more in a minute, but I would have liked them to keep him like one way or the other. You know what I mean? Like, there was this whole like mood switch.
But you don't think that he had to be a chameleon throughout his life to be able to get away with the things he got away with?
No, I agree with you on this is why I think he should have been like this in the first place. They should have showed him a little more normal. Maybe like in the beginning when he killed those people, they should have shown him being normal, because the whole movie they show him being unstable. Basically,
they're trying
you know what I mean? There's no normality to him.
They're trying to humanize him halfway through the movie after you've seen him do all this horrific shit. Yeah.
So he's all dressed up, and now he's got another mannequin. He's putting the nurse uniform on her. He's having another disturbing monologue kind of with himself, and he's tacking the scalp on her head, and he starts combing the hair, and it's like, it's a really fucked up scene. Like, it really is. Like, I don't want to throw too many F-bombs out there, but this one really deserves it. Like, it's really, really disturbing. I don't know how to say it any other. There's no way to nice it up. Because this whole switch of his personalities is just, it's unhinging in a way. I guess maybe that's what they were going for.
I don't want to think of this guy as normal. And there's a little bit of the movie where they try to make it like, but even the scenes where he acts normal, you can almost tell it's a crazy person acting normal. Like, and that is what's like really cool about Joe Spinell being an awesome actor. It's like, you tell someone act crazy, they act crazy. You tell them to act normal, they act normal. But say, I want you to be a crazy person who's trying to act normal. And Spinell does pull that off.
Yeah, because when he was crazy, he like was mumbling. The inner monologues were weird, But now he seems like a normal dude. So like now after the scene, it cuts to him showing up at the photographer lady's house, and he plays himself off as an artist and a painter, and he's admiring all her photos, and which is kind of weird how she just let him in the first place. You know what I mean? Like, there was no 100% reason for him to go in her house. I mean, I'm sure they had some reason for her to let him in. Maybe so. I forgot exactly the scene.
Well,
different
times.
It's not ingrained in my
different
head.
Times.
Different times. She lets him in, and then obviously this woman is like a million light years out of Frank's league. But he's got like a blazer on. He's dressed all nice, and he's talking all smooth. You know what I mean? And she accepts to go on a date with him, basically.
Yeah.
And you're just your mind is like, what?
But
What is going on here? Like,
But
I
it's
can't
because
believe this is
we know
happening.
what he's capable of. So we see him as this
Yeah,
greaseball, this and that. But this is her first encounter with him. So, like, she might see, like, little odds and ends, but she doesn't know what we know. You know?
yeah. Well, and she's also a photographer, so I'm sure she's used to like people, especially in the New York
Oh,
artsy
yeah.
world, as being a little off and weird,
Oh,
especially in the
especially the
80s.
80s. And
You know what I mean? So it's probably just strikes off normal to
exactly.
her
It's a
in
painter. He
theory.
probably has a studio apartment. And, like, even if she went over there and saw a
Hmm.
couple mannequins, it probably wouldn't even be weird because he's supposed to be this artist, this, like, avant garde, weird, you know what I mean? Fucking, and
Hmm.
not Jackson Pollock. What, the other guy from Andy Warhol. Andy
I know what you're
Warhol,
talking
yeah,
about. Yeah.
something like that. You know?
So, they plan to go out on a date. Now, I don't. Does the date happen first, or does he go to the film shoot where he meets the model? Do you remember? My brain. I'm being retarded right now in my nervousness and stuff. I'm forgetting
Give me a second. Let me
my
just think.
timeline.
So
Well, I mean,
he
does it really matter? I mean, he goes
he
out on a date
asks
with her.
her. He
Everything
asks
goes
her out to
fine.
dinner and
Yeah.
showed the photos, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then the scene goes to the photography session, and then they have the dinner scene later. So they did have that little photography scene
Yeah.
in between.
All right, so he goes to a photography session. He's sitting there hanging out. She's taking a picture of these three models. It's her job. She's surprised. He brings her a present. Gets this little teddy bear. So he's coming off as a super sweet guy. She's like all into it, and he steals this little necklace that one of the girls had to take off for the photo shoot, and he pockets it. So now you're like, oh, we see where this is going
Yeah.
now. So he ends up at her house, and she's in the middle of taking a bath. Another cliche
Now
of like
that
movies
cliche,
this like
that
it's hitting
was
everything.
around before this movie. So that actually at that time
Yeah,
that was a
yeah.
cliche. Yeah.
But the thing that they changed about it though, it's not like he broke in. He knocked on the door and she came over and let him in. He's like, "Oh, I found this at the studio. I thought that was yours, that you might be
Right.
missing it." And so she just closed. She's kind of like they're like, oh, all right, they had this like weird little pleasantries, and she shut the door, and then Frank breaks in
Yeah.
and proceeds to
Yeah.
murder her. So it was like kind of weird how they did it. Like it's almost like he wanted to see if he can charm his way into the house first, which goes back to showing like how he's not dumb and how he's still got his wits
Right. And
about
that
him, and he's not completely insane because of the way they filmed it like that. Whether they meant it or not,
right.
that's how
And
I
like
see
the
it.
way that he returned the camera, if she would have responded to that differently, he very well could have easily broke into that house too and killed her. Just that
Yeah.
she gave him a chance. With this one, she kind of shut him down. Oh, thank you very much. Blah blah blah. See you later. And he went on and did what he did.
So he ends up, I guess, now having dinner with the other girl, and everything goes fine. And did she get the phone call during that dinner, or was
Now,
the
see, I don't
second?
remember that. I
She
do
or some?
remember.
No, maybe it wasn't a phone call. There was something where she got interrupted, and she's like, "Oh, I got to do something."
But
I
I
don't know, forget. Never
remember.
mind. We're just
Yeah, I
gonna
remember
forget that
during the
part.
dinner, he actually starts
Yeah.
talking about his mother.
Well, that's what I'm trying to remember if that was after, because there was something where she was busy, and she was like, you know, and he starts making up all these excuses like, oh, you don't want me to go, or there's gonna be plenty of guys there. So Frank starts pulling out all these
Yeah.
insecurities. You remember what I'm talking about?
Yep.
That's what I was trying to play into, and so you start to see Frank break down with her a little bit, because it almost seems like he's almost too normal, and he's actually just gonna like date and hang out with this girl and kill other people, which is indirectly we
Right.
it later, but how kind of Henry was at one point in time, which is why we compared these movies. They had some
Right.
similarities that kind of crossed over.
That's all
All
good.
right, sorry, I'm like choking on my own. So now So now they're in the car and they start talking about his mother, and he's like, "Oh, do you care if we go stop and see her real quick?" So he's trying to play off as he's this nice guy because they were talking about his mother at the dinner previously, and he had his picture of her, and so that's when you realize that's who the woman is on the wall because you recognize the picture. So that weird little shrine he has in his room is her, like on there, and you're like, "Oh, this is all starting to make sense." And he had a
Put
few
two and two
little
together moments.
random random flashbacks, and you hear his mother abusing him and whatnot. So he starts to paint a picture that he has this unhealthy association with his mother where he loves her and hates her at the same time, which is why he's probably killing all these women. And then so now they're at the gravestone, and this is when the movie gets really weird.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
weird already, so he's down at the gravestone and he's having these flashbacks, and basically a zombie hand like reaches up and starts choking him.
But this is when you start to think, how intelligent is he compared to what mental problems does he actually have? Is he paranoid schizophrenic? Is he delusional? Is it sleep deprivation? I mean, it's not just a man who decides to kill. He actually has a trigger in his brain that is making him kill these people. I mean, normal people, even serial killers who go out and kill, don't have these vivid hallucinations of being grabbed by a zombie hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like it totally threw me for a loop in the movie. Like I didn't expect it to go this direction. Like it was
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
weird. So now they go through this whole, like, she tries to be like, "Yo, what's going on, Frank? Frank, you okay?" And then he proceeds to try to kill her. They have this chase scene in the cemetery. And now, see, here's like, here comes another slight problem. The pacing of the movie, all of a sudden, you're realizing we are now, like, what? You say four-fifths of the
Yeah,
movie now? You know what I mean?
you're
Like, we've gone
definitely
through
in
our peak, we're at
you're
our
definitely in the
end.
third act.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, you're in the third act, and like things are rushing by really
Yeah.
quick now. It's like they built up all this. They set his character, had all these like kills. Maybe they could have cut a kill or two out and played towards Frank's personality more in the
Yeah.
beginning, the way they did the movie. It was almost like it was two separate movies smushed together, but in a way that also made them creepier and the movie better and worse at the same time, depending
But
on how you
remember,
look
they
at it.
also cut out some footage for the rating board. So there might have been, at some point, some footage that maybe paced the ending a little.
Yeah,
I've
maybe.
never seen it. I've only seen the original theatrical release, and even the Blu-ray version is the original theatrical. So I don't know if that footage exists or not.
Yeah.
But it's a
Yeah, we
possibility.
don't know what's going on. Yeah. So she gets away, luckily. You know what I mean? Like, cause you don't want her to die. You actually
She
kind of root
becomes
for
the
her. You
main
know what I
character
mean? Like, you
that
don't.
is supposed to be like your hero. Yep.
At least you think it's going to go that way, but they never really go back to
Right.
her. She just kind of like gets cut out of the movie completely, and Frank is just continuing to have these delusions, and they show him back at his house, and he is completely lost it now. He is going through full paranoid,
Delusions.
schizophrenic
Yep.
delusions, and all his mannequins that he has of all these different women he's killed, he dresses them all up because he doesn't do anything with the body. He just takes their scalps and their clothes, and he dresses these mannequins up at his house. So now all these women come back alive, and they're mauling Frank and tearing him up. And this is where you see a precursor to, oh, excuse me, to Dawn of the Dead with Tom Savini and his makeup artistry. All the girls have kind of like this blue tint to their face, where a lot of the zombies in Dawn of the Dead had that blue. Like they did the exact same makeup to these
A
girls
little
in
too
that
blue
movie.
on Dawn of the Dead, though,
Which,
in my opinion.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, I agree, but I'm just saying, like, it just shows you the
Oh
progression
yeah.
of his filmmaking and the way they killed him. They killed him like a bunch of raving zombies, basically, just like the grave scene, and they're pulling him apart in his mind you. Obviously, this isn't really happening. It's not like one
No,
of those
but he
movies.
did have a wound from the encounter with the girlfriend. So
Yeah,
I don't know if it was more or if it was a mortal wound or not. But he did have that wound when he made back to the apartment, and I think that's what happened, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it could have been onset from like a concussion
Yeah.
of some sort, or like create like could or it could. I mean, maybe it could have jump started something in his brain. Some like levels of dopamine off or whatever. I mean, he was just
Yeah,
off in
yeah.
general and whatnot. But he ends up stabbing himself in the stomach to try to kill the so-called zombies of the girls he killed attacking him, and these two detectives out of nowhere basically. I mean, I guess they start putting some sort of pieces together with the girl. She gets away. She tells them they don't really
No, they
show
don't
it.
show any
You know
of
what I mean?
that. But if she gets away,
So
obviously she's going to
yeah,
report him. Yeah.
yeah. She reports them. Obviously, she knows where he lives, but they never show that he ever told her or
Right.
anything like that. So that's what I mean by the whole thing was just kind
Yeah.
of rushed in that third act at the end, and it didn't make full sense. But we get what's going on, and they bust in, and he's dead on the bed, like just bled out. And then in a kind of supposed to be like fun surprise, like the cops just leave like nothing happened, and then Frank's eyes open. So you don't know if
Yeah.
that's actually
Now,
happened or not. It's this whole weird.
did he survive? Is it an afterlife? Did he think it all
Yeah.
up? Now, one really cool thing about that last scene when the mannequins are attacking him, the one mannequin that didn't have the head, that mannequin made an appearance in another film. Tom Savini.
And what would that be, Gray?
Friday the 13th, Jason's mother, the headless body. That is that
Oh.
same exact dummy from Friday the 13th that was in Maniac at the end. And I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, it is pretty awesome because I mean they were released
Yep.
at the same
And
time.
same sweater, same blue sweater and all. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. I should have picked up on that. Yeah, considering I picked up all the Dawn of the Dead references, to the makeup and the artist, Tom Savini in that movie, the way he did them, I didn't notice that.
That's
Yep.
great. Yeah.
Good call. Good call.
So,
I mean, I guess the ending, they left it the way it is because they did want to make a sequel,
yeah.
which never fully went through. They had a Maniac 2 short that they filmed to try to raise money, which actually was kind of a cool idea. I mean, I would watch it. I mean, it's a remake of a 73 film called Psychopath, about a psychopathic children's television show host who murders abusive parents of the show. I mean, I would
Yeah.
watch that. I think
But
that's
I
pretty
honestly
cool.
don't know why they didn't make a sequel, because the budget for this movie was $350,000 and the box office pull was $10 million.
Yeah, and especially in the money
Yeah.
then, you can pretty much triple, almost quadruple.
That's what
it
I'm
now.
saying. Like, the movie
like-
not only had the popularity, but it literally made its own money back to make another sequel. Even if they took 700,000, say they doubled the budget, they would still have a lot of profit left. Spinell was alive for the following 8 or
Well,
9 years.
I'm trying to look to see what he did after.
I think what it was is the production company wasn't expecting so many problems, because the problems with the movie did not come from development. They shot it guerrilla style and stuff, but that wasn't the issue. The issue was the critics and the groups, that were against this movie. So since the movie originally was not submitted to the MPAA, it was released unrated, designed for adults only. And the poster said no one under 17, stuff like that. It was edited to the R rating, so that's the one that made the most money, was that R rating one. Unfortunately, the critics weren't the only ones who did not like this movie. The feminist groups would say how this movie portrayed women was not fair to women. It was not realistic. And they boycotted the shit out of this movie. All that did was draw people to want to see it more. So thank you, feminists, for allowing people to see this movie. And then basically, I'm not gonna go into full detail on the remake, only because it's a remake, and it would be me pretty much saying a bunch of the stuff that you just said. Like, the story is the same. It's a remake, you know? And I don't think we would want to do that to people. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, I'm going to read you the Old Testament from the Catholic version, and then I'm going to have this guy read it from the New International. It's the same thing, you
Yeah,
know?
we just want people to know the movie exists and it wasn't that bad. It was actually like a decent remake.
Yes, they stayed somewhat true to the movie. They got a couple of not low end, not no name, but they got like lesser known people to produce and direct. Actually, the director of this movie. Have you seen High Tension?
Yeah.
So he did High Tension, which I actually had seen that years ago when it came out, and I thought, well, it's pretty good. I like the way it's shot. I like the
Yeah.
music and this and that.
Talk about surprise twist, right?
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about it
Yeah.
someday.
No, I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean? It's like, talk about surprise twist. That was like one of those major twists
Yeah,
in a movie, you know? It was like the big thing at the time.
yeah. Now, the one thing about the remake, it's like the original movie had like this Joe Spinell, this like respected actor, and then like a bunch of no names. Well, when we get into the remake, you had the main character played by Elijah Wood, everyone's favorite blue-eyed little hobbit, you know, and then like a bunch of no names. I mean, they might have gone on to do some stuff since then, but when this came out, they were pretty much no one. You had a foreign director, you had a foreign composer. Like, this was a passion project from people who actually enjoyed the first movie and had the opportunity to remake it. Let me just talk about a
I
pro.
think that's a good thing, though. But it was a
It
passion
is.
project that they enjoyed.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? The first movie, and remade it with the spirit of the first film. Because too much, you get these remakes that go
Are
way off
cash-ins?
track. They're atrocious. Yeah, they're atrocious. I mean,
Listen.
Dawn of the Dead remake was good. People had issues with the fast zombies, but there was Day of the Dead remake, which was fucking terrible. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like, there was just, it started this whole remake culture. I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street
Well,
remake. You know what I mean? I'm just
the
saying.
first
like,
the
you
first
know.
few the first few remakes that come out were under Platinum Dunes, which is Michael Bay's company, and
I
they
actually didn't know
nailed
that.
it.
I
Oh
didn't know
yeah,
he
Michael
owned
Bay.
Anchor Bay.
That's his. And the first ones that they did were the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it was a hit. And I actually like the first two Texas Chainsaw Massacre remakes, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Beginning. Now, since then, they've released like 4 other Texas Chainsaw Massacre ones, and we'll talk about that whole fucking thing one
Yeah.
time, but not tonight because I don't want to get my blood pressure up. But yeah, you know, those movies kind of kickstart the remake, not just for horror movies, but I think for movies in general.
Yeah,
Because a
no,
lot
in
of movies
general,
are
yep.
getting remade, and the first popular ones were the horror movies that were getting remade, you know?
Well, I think they realized there's money in that remake scene.
The
You know, like, so
nostalgia.
even those even though those movies were bad, like they were still raking in money and being positives for the most part. Not all of them were, but you know, they
They
figured
could
they can get a
remake,
good.
yeah, they could remake Friday the 13th every year. I'd still go see it.
Well,
You know?
that's just like putting out sequels in a way, though. That's not really remaking, but I know what you mean.
No, I'm literally saying they could
Yeah.
remake it every year, and I would still go see it. Like, I'm just a
Jason
fan.
nostalgia,
And
though.
that's it.
Yeah.
Now, let me talk about the pros for the remake. The soundtrack is the best. I am a huge fan of movie scores. As a matter of fact, I might not have mentioned this in the original episode, but I am a musician. I've been a musician for over 20 years, and I love composing music for horror movies and even like commercial jingles, stuff like that. But I'm, very much into music. And I will say that the remakes music is not only better than the original Maniac soundtrack, I would say it's in the top 5 soundtracks of all time. And I'm not talking about movies that have very popular songs. Like, okay, if we were to talk about, say a movie, let me think, like Boogie Nights. Okay, a lot, or Saturday Night Fever or Grease. Those actually had songs that were performed in the movie. And yeah, that's a soundtrack. I'm
Sorry.
talking about, no, it's
I
okay.
just started
I'm
giggling
talking
about Boogie Nights, and I think of "You Got the Touch," sung by Mark Wahlberg.
Hey, you know what? I like some disco. I like some disco. I'll admit, okay? And Boogie Nights and Saturday Night Fever, but those soundtracks were based on songs that were already hits, and they were put together. When you talk about soundtracks for a film, like composed music, Maniac, it's beautiful. The remake, it's synth heavy, just like the original, but it's a modern synth, so it actually sounds better, not like a $10 Casio keyboard. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know. Yeah, I mean that movie alone is worth a view just for the soundtrack alone.
Yeah, you'll get those songs stuck in your head. Like, that's how good they are. Other than that, okay, no, all right, so they did do a lot of practical effects on the Maniac remake, which they didn't have to because it was 2012 is when it was released. They had CG, and there is some CG in the movie, but they did a lot of practical, and because Greg Nicotero worked on the remake and he was a student of Tom Savini. If he would have went in there and did all digital effects, I think Tom Savini would have disowned him.
Well, it's not even that. I feel like though practical and CG mixed together make the best. You know what I mean? Like when done right. Like that's the way to go.
Sparingly.
You can save some costs by adding some little touch ups,
Blood
and
splatter,
a little
and
extra stuff that maybe you didn't get in the first shot, or just making it look a little more realistic. Because I mean, with 4K and others, just DVD and Blu-ray now, some practical effects don't look as good as they did back then. You know what
absolutely.
I mean?
So let me just talk about the number one con I have with the movie. Elijah Wood is not a believable Frank Zito. Elijah Wood should have no problem finding a girlfriend. He is a normal, good-looking guy. You know what I mean? Frank Zito, it wasn't like, oh, well, he looks good, but his personality shit. No, dude, the guy was overweight, sweaty, greasy. Well,
If you go into
if
you go into like the movie itself and the little background of the remake, they originally wanted to cast Tom Sizemore as Frank Zito, and
that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally fits the movie way better. Tom Sizemore,
Yeah.
also, you believe he is crazy. I mean, you know what I mean. It would have been. I think it would have been a way better movie personally, but for some reason, they don't really talk about why it fell through. I mean, I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but I didn't find it.
I thought you were about to say Tom Selleck. No. Like Magnum PI? Well, he's got the mustache, but that's about it.
Well, since you brought up Magnum PI, and you said your dad looks like
Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott. My stepfather looks like Tom Selleck.
No shit.
It's hilarious. Yeah, it's
and you know who
like
else looks like Tom Selleck? The old UFC fighter who spent some time in the WWF.
Well, there's two.
Dan
There's
Severn.
two of them. Dan Severn, but Don Fry looked.
Oh,
more
Don
like
Fry.
Don Fry looks more like Tom Selleck, but yeah, Dan Severn also had that same. It's the mustache and the facial shape. They were like big guys, like not like fat, but you know what I mean. They were just like big.
They were
built
thick boys.
dudes, like you know what I mean. Like, it's just that whole body shape, the head shape. Like they just had these big, massive noggins with the short brownish black hair and the mustache and the eyes. Like it just
they were thick boys, and their milkshake would bring all the boys to the yard. So basically, I'm not going to go into scene for Maniac for the remake because I want you to watch the original. And if you like the original enough that you're going to check out the remake, I just told you the one thing I like about it and the one thing I'm not a huge fan of. But I would recommend watching the remake because it is a good remake.
I agreed. I mean, I couldn't say it any better. I have, I think people should go out and watch the original. It's definitely worth watching. It's not as bad as some reviews go out there to say. Go out there and say. I don't think people are gonna read these reviews and take them as they're chipped in granite per se. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think people like us just kind of blow off a lot of reviews and just see stuff on their own. But there are some people out there. If you're one of them, disregard reviews, go into it with an open mind, see the original, and then go see the remake.
And here's the problem. Back then, people who reviewed stuff, food critics, movie critics, these were paid professionals, and their job was to review stuff. Nowadays, with the internet, every Tom, Dick, and Harry can go and review a movie,
Yeah, ain't
and
that
just
the
like
truth?
just like a restaurant, dude. Random people go to restaurants, and you get a guy who's never had sushi before. He goes to a sushi place that gets 5 stars everywhere, and he's like, "Oh, sushi was disgusting. Wasn't even cooked. 1 star." And then now all of a sudden everyone reads like, what, a 1 star review? Oh my God, it must have been terrible. No, this guy's an idiot. Go on your
Oh
own
my god. Yeah, a
and
lot of those
make,
people if you go to their pages, they hate everything. They're just haters. Like they go in and they make bad reviews that try to be popular.
yeah.
You know what I mean? They do it
Or
on
you get
purpose.
you get the people who like think that they're movie buff, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, stay away from this movie, The Godfather. Oh, it's like half the time they speak a whole different language. No, instead you should watch this movie called All Dogs Go to Heaven. It's a cute little cart. It's like, dude, they're not even the fucking same. Get
The
out.
shade of green was wrong and it ruined the whole movie for me, so I just walked out.
Yeah, yeah. And they're like, oh, but
Just
one thing I
something
can
dumb.
recommend
Yeah.
is Medea's house. It's like, okay, listen, you're just on a different wavelength than like most people. That's the thing. Like, if you do the research or you see a trailer, yeah, if you want to check out some reviews, that's cool, but take it with a grain of salt. Even what we say, you might not like these movies after you watch them, but it's just opinion.
Agreed. And as low budget as they are, there is a lot to learn for aspiring filmmakers or just anyone that can appreciate the way certain scenes are shot. Some
Oh
of
yeah.
these movies, as low budget they have classic scenes in them. They have a classic shooting style, or they do things a certain way that just it's mimicked over and over again afterwards. And I feel like Maniac definitely falls in that case with a certain, to a certain extent, with certain things. I mean, I'm not saying it's no, masterpiece, but definitely the way they
Right.
did their special effects and stuff, you can learn from it.
Right, and like if you don't pay attention to the reviews, you will take something away from that movie. Whether you're just a horror buff or a movie buff, or like you just said, like if you're interested in filmmaking and stuff, everyone's gonna get something from that. And just as easily as the next movie that we're actually comparing it to or with, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Now, before I get into this movie, I just want to take the time to do this real quick. It's come to our attention during our conversations on horror movies. We often want to recommend everything under the sun because we just love everything related to horror, whether it's movies or books, comics, TV shows, music. But when we get into our deep conversation, we may not always remember to make our recommendations. For this reason, the GrindHaus on 42nd Street proudly presents Gore's Pick of the Week. Introducing to the family, Gorely Girl. Every week during the GrindHaus on 42nd Street podcast, we'll take a break, and Gore's going to give her pick of the week, whether it be a movie, a song, a music video, documentary, book, graphic novel, anything related to horror, she knows. And I know she knows. She happens to be my sister. And if it wasn't for her, I would not have the love of horror that I have today. So she knows her shit. So, without further ado, let me pass it off to Gorly Girl with Gore's Pick of the Week.
The creature is coming. Gorly Girl 138.
Good evening, freaks and creeps. Thanks for tuning into the Serial Killer Academy tonight. This is Gorly Girl, and I'm here with Gore's Pick of the Week. I was approached by Gray to do a weekly short to break up the GrindHaus on 42nd Street episodes. This week, I wanted to introduce myself since I'm new to the crew. So, hella quick rundown about me. Most of my days are spent working in a warehouse. I'm a mom of a teenage boy. I play roller derby. I like long walks in the forest away from people. I collect roadkill and plants. I spend a majority of the time coloring, crafting, and dabbling in effects makeup. With me, horror is a lifestyle, and I'm lucky enough to have someone who supports my habits and hobbies. Okay, so this week I wanted to credit one of my favorite bands, who also has one of the best music videos in my opinion. The Misfits song Scream, from their 1999 album Famous Monsters. The music video was directed by George A. Romero. You know the Night of the Living Dead movies? Yeah, well, he took all of that zombification and used it for the music video. The rockin' stage performance is done in color, while the tone of the story and the setting is based in a hospital in black and white. As the musicians get wheeled into the hospital, the music gets deep and takes a dark turn. Each member wakes from the bloodied sheets, stomping in their chunky platform boots, leather vests, and raise hell as high as their mohawks. The effects used in the video not only showcase the talent of Romero, but the passion of the Misfits for horror as they bite, scratch, and tear through the helpless staff. It's a gore fest. This music video combines two of the most influential units that have inspired me to do movie makeup and make people want to scream. As I was born in the mid-'80s, I feel that punk is rooted in me, and the Misfits have encouraged me to be the weirdo I am. So much that in 9 years of Derby, I've been wearing the number 138. In conclusion, I hope you've enjoyed Gore's Pick of the Week. Stay tuned to the Serial Killers Academy and GrindHaus on 42nd Street for more of the gore.
So, as we were saying, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. It was directed by John McNaughton, written by Richard Fire and John McNaughton, starring a young Michael Roker. I don't know if it was his first, starring role, but it's up there. And obviously he's been in tons of stuff since then. So, obviously...
Well, I mean, everyone knows him from The Walking Dead, basically.
Right, and he has a face, he's been in movies, and he's never really been, a main character, but he's kind of like Danny Trejo. He's in so much, but he's only in it for, 5 to 10 minutes, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, well, this was actually his second movie. Oh, actually, it's his first movie, but it's his second ever credit. So he did an episode of a TV series called Crime Story, and then Henry was literally his first role.
Okay.
So considering it was also his first role, he did an amazing job.
Yes, he did great. The music was actually a team of guys. I have to say it. Robert McNaughton, who, relation to the director and producer, John McNaughton, as well as Steve Jones and Ken Hale. And again, for this movie come out in 1986, one of my favorite things about this movie is the soundtrack. I don't know. I guess just the type of movies that I like from the time period, synth was very big, and you can see it in even modern horror movies. yeah, sometimes you need like those operatic voices, and sometimes you need like a slight violin trem, but nothing's gonna beat these gritty, walking down 42nd Street in the late 70s in New York after midnight, and you know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I mean, just the sound, the way they did certain things, and especially with these types of movies, it just fits in and blends in perfectly and adds a certain ambience to the movie, and
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, you can't go wrong. I mean, I don't know, I love it.
Yeah, it's perfect. Even if I just wasn't even watching the screen, but I would just had the music going and stuff like that, I would still be fascinated by it.
Yeah, so Michael Rooker, just real quick, I'm looking at his IMDb here. Henry was really like his first role. Did a bunch of other like little things. He had a small role in Above the Law with Steven Seagal, nothing crazy. Then he did Mississippi Burning, which was a big movie at the time. I'm not sure exactly what his role was in that. He had some other stuff, and then his first real big. I'm assuming he took off a little bit from something in here, whatever. But then he did Days of Thunder, so he was with Tom
Yep.
Cruise in that NASCAR movie. It was 1990. He did JFK right after it. The Dark Half. He did Cliffhanger with Sylvester Stallone. He did Tombstone. Like he.
Oh,
was in
that's right. He
Mallrats.
wasn't.
Yeah.
He wasn't Tombstone. That's right.
Yeah. He's got a smaller role ish. Like,
Yeah.
but,
You
He
know
was
who
in
else had a
Mallrats.
small
He was
role
the infamous-
in
what's that?
Tombstone? Billy Bob Thornton.
Did he really? I didn't. When I looked at the cast, I didn't even see him. I mean, he could have been. Yeah, I totally believe it.
He's the card
Fits in
dealer that
perfect.
Wyatt Earp.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wyatt Earp grabs him by the ear and takes him outside. Yep, that's him.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people know him from Mallrats. If you go back to those Kevin Smith movies.
Yeah.
Would you like a chocolate covered pretzel?
Pretzel. Yes, that's him.
He was, he was himself in an uncredited role in Meet Wally Sparks with Rodney Dangerfield. I mean, he's just. I mean, there's so much stuff in here. I could just.
And
go
then he
on
moved-
and on and on.
As he got older, he kind of moved to more TV stuff. Stargate, CSI, Jag. More TV stuff.
He did a couple episodes of Stargate, CSI Miami.
He did some voiceover work for video games, the Scarface video game. Somehow Scarface gets
Chronicles of Riddick,
mentioned.
Escape from Butcher's Bay video game. Actually,
Yep.
he just said video games. Yeah, it was Jag.
So he's had quite a resume.
Well, Slither is one of the other ones that's a big role for him.
That's right.
It's a fantastic movie. I recommend everyone go see that one.
Oh, and Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah,
Duh.
well, I mean that's the later stuff. I was getting there. I'm just scrolling up, like on here.
From
There's
first
still
to newest.
so much on here.
Yeah, we can't go over every piece that he's
over
been
everything.
in.
I'm just skipping over stuff and being like,
The
other
big
people
stuff.
might see something in here and they'd be like, "Oh, I remember that," or "I remember him that." But I'm just picking out things that I remember him from. Obviously,
Right.
He was Merle Dixon in The Walking Dead, like we were talking. Everyone
Yep.
knows him from The Walking Dead. He was in Guardians of the Galaxy. He was Yondu.
So basically, and this was his first starring role. Now, I want to say this now, and it will be brought up later. The budget for this movie was only $110,000, and it only made $609,000. So I just keep that in mind.
Which is a
So-
big difference compared to Maniac.
Right, but when we talk about our conversation later
Yeah.
on, I'm going to bring that up.
Yeah.
So basically, it is kind of like Maniac. It's a psychological horror crime film. It takes place, in the 80s, and the main character focus. Now, some people have argued that it's actually the girl, but the film is literally called Henry. He is the main character.
I've never heard anyone argue that before. I think whoever argued that with them, you should give them a quick slap. A friendly slap, not like a.
But no, that's like saying Scarface, yeah, that Michelle Pfeiffer movie. Like, what? No, get out of here. What are you?
Yep.
It's Tony Montana, you cockroach. You know?
The
So,
main actor is the police department.
yeah, right? So, Michael Roker is Henry. Tom Towles is Otis, his friend from prison he's staying with. Tracy Arnold is Becky. That's Otis's sister. Those are basically your main actors. Everyone else in this movie, you're not really going to know much from anything. It was filmed in 1985. It had a lot of difficulty finding a distributor. It actually got premiered at the Chicago Film Festival in '86. And because of that film festival, it got a small release throughout the United States. But it attracted the controversy because the original X rating. Now, it was 1986. A lot of stuff happened from 1980 to 1986. So they didn't edit it down. They released it in 1990.
It was also shot on 16 millimeter film, which is what helped the budget. Was also kind of an oddity at the time.
Right, and that is more of your guerrilla film style
Yeah.
making. 16 millimeters, just pick up and go. Cameras that you can put on your shoulder, no problem. You know, but there's not a lot to go off of when you want to talk about the production. It was shot in less than a month. Like, basically, that's the kind of movie we're looking at. And I'm not dogging this movie, but I'm setting it up in a way that when we talk about certain things, I'm trying to make sense of them. And it's very hard. At least for me, it is.
Well, a
So-
month just in general. Like, I mean, a lot of the low budget movies are filmed in about a month, maybe 6 weeks. You know, but we're also talking a different time in life. You know, the 85. It's different than shooting a picture now in a month. You know, or even 10 years ago in 30 days or 45 days. You know what I mean? It's a totally different spectrum
Dude.
of filming.
We could go out
know?
today with our cell phones and film a movie and edit
Exactly.
everything on it. We can edit everything on our phone and we can upload it and distribute it off our phone today. 1985, you didn't have those options, you know? It's actually,
doubt.
it's crazy how many independent movies were able to come out back then. But then again, it was easy to distribute your own. If you had the money, you can just get a whole bunch of VHS copies made and then ship them out. So there was that, you know?
Well, there was also companies that would distribute your movie, and if it didn't do well, they just owned it. They could do whatever
Yes.
the hell they wanted. You just lost your movie at that point in time. It was
Yeah,
almost like
and-
your movie was the collateral. I mean, obviously they
Right.
might want other stuff too, or maybe like at least a down payment of some sort or something. But you know, there was a lot of options back then. I mean, I'm sure someone will do that now, but there's no need to in a way. You can almost start your own distributor company, you know, by
Oh, absolutely.
making a YouTube page of little short movies and just growing that way. You know, there's just a different culture and a different.
I mean, same thing with our podcast. We're using a company right now that takes our recording, Anchor, and we put it on Anchor. They actually stream their own podcast, but they also distribute it. So the reason you can hear us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that is because one company is taking our stuff and putting it out there. And we give them like a 30-second plug in the beginning of our episodes, and that's it. Like, literally, it's that easy. So
Amazing times we live in.
yeah, it is. So the beginning of this movie, it kind of threw me off a little bit. It's basically these fade in, fade out shots of like close-ups of women who have been killed. One's in like a body of water, and one has like a cord around her throat. But basically it fades in, it fades out, and the music is this beautiful piano with a synth on top. So it's still classical with the piano sound, but it has this unnervingness between the synth kind of pressing in there.
You know what it kind of sort of reminded me of, and I don't want to get too far off on the tangent of this, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre in a way, when they show the Polaroids.
Yes, the
You know
sound of
what
the
I mean? It's
Polaroid.
just like, not even just the
Yep.
sound, but just the way they did it. You see the Polaroids, and you see the like different death and mutilations or whatever, and it's almost like they kind of maybe didn't not necessarily steal it, but like did their own with it. You know what I mean? Did it
Right.
their own way. You know, with the piano intro, because Texas Chainsaw had that, you know, that sound. You know, like
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
the
and
charging.
actually, that was edited from the trill of like a cello bass running stuff up the strings at a higher frequency. So it's just literally, it sounds like a squeaky door, but it
Yeah.
was an instrument, you know, and then with other effects and stuff like that. I think it's beautiful.
But it sets
I
a
really
tone
do.
to this movie, is what we're getting at.
Right. Yep. So like the basic plot point for Henry is this guy who just travels through America and kills people. He might stay a day or two at one place. He might stay a month at another.
Men,
You know,
women,
and-
and children. Henry just doesn't give a crap who you are. He kills anyone. He has no heart, no soul, nothing as of right now.
Right. And the beginning of the movie kind of sets up that you get this guy. He stops at a diner and ends up killing 2 waitresses. And then it kind of gets slow. I'm sorry. Like, I know a lot of critics love this movie. It kind of drags a little.
I don't think it dragged, honestly. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on that one. I remember the movie being slower than it actually was when I watched it again recently. And I thought it
Right.
fit perfectly. I thought it was paced. Actually, I think it was paced a little bit better than Maniac in a way. Everything
see-
fit. Everything lined up right. There was no, you know, really slow and then rushed at the end. Like, it just stayed at one nice motion. Now, maybe it's
here's the
slower
thing.
than other movies, but
Right. And
It
that's what I'm
fit
going
perfect.
off of. I remember watching it years ago, and I, for some reason, when I watched it again recently, I didn't remember half of the dialogue scenes. I remember the kill scenes. I remember the intense scenes, but I didn't remember there was like so many just dialogue scenes. And I realized from watching that recently, I guess maybe that's where I got the thought of, maybe I thought it was paced a little faster. But and also when I was younger, what stuck out in my mind most, and it was probably the kills. You know what I mean? Those scenes.
that's funny. You thought it was paced faster and it was slower, and I thought it was paced slower and
Yeah.
faster.
You know?
I just showed
So-
you that's why we're doing this together. We have different, unique ideas on things sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, we gotta toss the stuff around, and people can make their own decision. Like, the number one thing is, it's not like we want you to agree with me or agree with him. We want you to hear what we have to say, and then make your own opinion. Like, that's number one. Just go out, check out what we talk about, you know, if you're interested, and then make your own opinion. I mean, you want to make a follow-up video and send to us or something, we'll give it a watch or give it a listen. Absolutely. So
We're just the little devils on your shoulder telling you to go watch more horror movies.
yeah, that's it. Basically, that's
do
it.
Do it. Watch it. Watch it. Watch it.
And they look over to the right, and I'm like, "Yeah, do it. Listen to him. What are you doing? Like, come on." So Otis, this kind of mongoloid-looking southern redneck. I don't even know. I wouldn't say southern, but he's definitely from a small town. We'll say
He doesn't sound like it, but I know what you mean. He's just got that.
like he could easily be from Wisconsin.
Maybe
know-
it's just a Midwesterner look.
That's
I guess,
it.
in a way. Like, you know.
Yeah. Yep. He picks up his sister, and his sister and him. You don't know that they're brother and sister at first, but they're having a conversation. He's picking her up. She's talking about staying in town, maybe for a few days, weeks, months. She does let it be known that she has a daughter and that her mother is watching the daughter. She's going through a divorce. But she told her daughter that her dad was, you know, like off in the army or whatever. You know, like your basic kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, in movies when it's almost like forced dialogue and they kind of have to set it up. It's not exploitation. It's, oh, come on.
I don't know. I'm trying to think. I know what you mean. They're setting like a backstory a little bit, like she's abused. They're breaking.
It's
up
almost
with the,
yeah, it's forced. It's like, look, we don't have time to show you all this, so we're just gonna say all these words, and hopefully you get the idea. That's gonna bug me, and you know what? I'll remember it in like 15 minutes, and I'll just yell it out. We'll
Yeah,
be talking
we'll
about
just yell
something
it
else
out.
complete.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Otis brings.
wait, hold on,
his,
it's not foreshadowing you're talking about, are you?
No,
Right.
dude, it sounds like exploitation. It's something tation, I think.
All right.
Fuck. Are you really gonna make me do this right now? Because like,
No,
it's
no. Just
gone.
go into your.
Okay.
Set it up. It'll come out. We'll just blurt it out. Just.
Yeah, I will. And that's the problem. Like, we'll be talking about something completely different, and I'll just be like, "Huh, it's you know." So they make it back to Otis's apartment, and that's when we first see Henry interacting with people that he isn't killing. Basically.
That actually, first off, that threw me off a little bit. I wasn't expecting Henry to be living with people when the movie first opened, so it kind of threw me for a little curveball there.
Yeah, it is kind of weird because, I mean, basically you see him as a drifter. You wouldn't think that he would have anyone like that, you know?
Yeah, he definitely seems like a loner. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So at one point, Otis and Becky, they're having a conversation, and Becky asks Otis where he met Henry, and he said in jail. And she's like, "What'd he do?" And like he kind of jokingly says like, "Oh, killed his mother." And she was like, "Okay, yeah, whatever." And what did he really do? And he was like, he killed his mother. But if you say anything, you're in big fucking trouble, because I don't want him knowing I'm out telling his business or whatever. Well, Becky, being a complete retard that she is, later in the evening, is playing cards with Henry while Otis is out on the town making a drug sale, or going out and getting a hookup or whatever. And she tries to like force this conversation about, what was his dad like, and her dad was like this, and her mom was like this, and she didn't like the dad, and she just blatantly is like, "Did you kill your mother?" Like straight up. And
yeah,
Henry,
that was just kind of cold right out in the conversation, like especially with Henry's body language while they're playing cards. It was definitely like a weird setup, and I don't think a normal human being would have said that.
Exposition.
I mean,
Exposition is the word.
there you go.
I said exploitation, but yeah, it's basically exposition where, they don't have time to show you something and they just force this dialogue to let you know, hey, this is what's happening. Exposition. Thank you. So, but then Henry's reaction is he doesn't like try to hide it or lie. He straight up says like, yeah, I did what I had to do. My mother, no, actually, he's like, my mother was a whore. Like, I laughed out loud at the delivery of that line. She was like, "Did you really kill your mother?" And he's like, "Yeah." And she says something else, and he just looks at her like real, like dead-eyed, and he's like, "My mother was a whore." And like, I chuckled. I don't know why. But he tells a story that his parents were together, and the mother used to have people come over and she'd fuck them for money. The dad was there. He didn't do nothing about it because he was an alcoholic, and she would force young Henry to watch. And they would dress Henry up in dresses, and they would laugh at him while having sex in front of him. So you can kind of see where some of these deep-seated issues come from. If that's fair.
No, it's fair. I mean, it was definitely super messed up that they did that to him. I mean, there's no excuse for acting like that. I mean, I can't imagine how I would have turned out if something like that happened.
Absolutely.
To me. You know what I mean? It's not something you want to think about, but it just another thing that sets a tone for this movie and of how disturbing some of these backstories are, because then Becky gets into her backstory right after, and she talks about how her father raped her as a teenager, and he, Henry is just disturbed by sexual violence against women because of his prior child abuse at the hands of his mother. But it's kind of funny in a way. You know what I mean? I guess Henry's
Right.
a murderer, but he's not really a rapist. You know what I mean? He's not. He's got some sort of murderous morals in a way.
Right. And like they kind of bond over it, and you see
Yeah.
this certain side of Henry that, oh, well, maybe this can be the one that kind of sets him straight or whatever. But later in the night, when they're all get done eating dinner and partying, her brother Otis asks her for a beer, and when she goes to give him the beer, he pulls her arm in and tries to like make out with her, and Henry like flips out.
Henry
And
ain't having
hits-
none of that shit in front of him.
Yeah, and like he's straight, like he hit him, and he's like, "You don't do that shit," like just straight up like that. And like the
I think
scene,
it was a little more than that. I think he basically threatened. He said he'd kill him if he did that again.
right? Well, that's what I'm saying. When he hit
Yeah.
him, he hit him. He's like, "You don't do that shit," and he's like,
Yeah.
"God, I'm sorry." And then he was like, "Say you're sorry," and he apologized. He's like, "And if you ever do that shit, you know what I mean?"
Yeah, yeah.
And then there was the awkward silence afterwards. Well, no, Becky said, "Thank you, Henry." And then there was like an awkward silence, and she's like, "Why don't you guys go out for a beer?" And they just look at each other after this incident. They're like, "Yeah, all right, well, we'll go get a beer, whatever." You know, like that shit didn't just happen. Okay. So they get in the car, they're driving around, and they meet up with two prostitutes. Prostitutes get in the car, they pull in a back alley, and Henry's in the back seat with his, and Otis is up front with his, and you see the camera moving in the car, and you start hearing the prostitute saying, "Hey, hey, take it easy. Hey, calm down, Tiger. Hey, slow down." And then you kind of hear like a muffled scream, and then you just hear crack.
Just snaps her neck like a toothpick.
So the other girl is like, "What's going on?" She looks in the back seat, finds out what's going on, goes to scream. Henry reaches right over the front seat and gives it to her too. Just crack.
Yeah,
Like,
no, Otis is freaking out right now, though. So there's a difference between Henry and Otis right now, because Henry is just he lured them in with the thought of sex and then making money, but then murder. But Otis really just wanted to get down.
Right.
Otis was just selling drugs and kind of womanizer, maybe hanging out with dudes. They kind of, you know what I mean? Like he was just this weird dude that just was into that little Larry thing.
But because of a later scene, I think
Yeah.
Otis has more of these questions about stuff, but he never acted on them until Henry, because he did try to make out and force himself on his sister, and as we'll talk about in a later scene, he did make pass a move on a young teenage boy. So there are these things, revolving
Well,
around
even before
Otis.
that, though, I got this vibe from Otis, though, that he was like that even before that. I don't know, maybe it was just me.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what
but
I mean?
he
He's got this party vibe from him. You know what I mean?
But you wouldn't associate with you would think he's a criminal for sure, but you wouldn't
by
think he
far.
was a killer.
No. That's the only thing I didn't get from him.
Right.
The whole like I thought there was like a weird thing with his sister, even when he picked her up at the airport. Like you just had this weird feel. Otis, was dealing drugs
Yep.
at his gas station, and just you can tell he was just a shady dude per se.
He would
he's
kind
not a
of-
killer, but just
He would kind of fit into a Rob Zombie movie.
Yeah. I mean, actually, that dude could probably replace Sid Haig.
Yeah, that's fair.
He could be like a good replacement for his character now that Sid, unfortunately, has passed away.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the dude looks like now, but we're just trying to paint a picture of what
the
he
character
is in
that he
this
could
movie.
pull off.
Yeah.
Right. So as soon as the prostitutes are dead, they toss Henry pulls him out of the car, says that he's gonna drive, and Otis is kind of freaking out, and he's like, "Look, what happened, and that's it. It's us or them or us. Basically, this is how it's going. And it got quiet, and he says, let's get some food. And
Actually, sorry to interrupt you, but actually, Otis is dead.
Huh?
He died in 2015.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
Well, there's that.
1950 to 2015. And his picture, the last picture they have him here, he looks scarily like Sid Haig. It's crazy.
Yeah, he had that. He had that vibe. So while Henry's just eating a food and trying to explain to him, look, it is this simple. You just don't talk about it.
Hold on. I'm sorry. God damn it. I keep cutting you off. He fucking is in Rob Zombie movies. I thought this dude looked familiar.
I knew it.
Him back up.
I knew it.
He's the fucking. Words. He's the deputy George Wendell in House of a Thousand Corpses.
Yes, I knew it, and I was going to
he's
say,
Devil's Rejects. He's in GrindHaus. He's in the Werewolf Women of the SS.
Yep, I was going to say this guy. Yep, dude, trust me, I know who he is and I knew I had seen him before, and that's why I even said he would fit in perfectly in a Rob Zombie movie because he's been in nearly all of them.
Yep. Like when I go back and because you don't see it like you see it then. But when you look at his picture now, you know what I mean? He looks a lot different. He just looks a lot older. But
yeah,
without his hat off and he's bald and all that stuff, you're like, oh, God damn it, it is that guy. He is in these movies.
Yeah. Yep.
That
was my subconscious kicking in.
Yeah.
So basically, Henry gives them, look, this is how it is, and just, forget about it. It's us or them. So later, Otis, he's trying to get reception on like one of those old school TVs, fucking with the rabbit ears and stuff. And he gets mad and he kicks a hole through it. And Henry comes in, he's like, what'd you do that for? Just like straight up, well, time to get a new TV. And they show up at, and I shit you not, they show up at this warehouse that my dad had friends dealer. My dad had friends that had places like this growing up, and I would go into these places with my dad. Now, the people who ran them weren't these seedy criminals and this and that, but yeah, they would get stuff that fell off the back of trucks and stuff like that, whatever. So as soon as they opened that garage door and I saw that like the TV stacked on each other and the other electronics and this and that, I'm like, oh man, to be a kid again, And there's the basic sales pitch. Hey, we need a TV. How much is this TV? Oh, this one's $50. But it's in black and white. Oh, well, if you want color, it's $150. And they see a video camera, and he's like, oh, well, it's like $1,000 brand new, but $500 you can have it.
Oh my god, these prices are ridiculous when you look at them.
Yeah,
the items in there, they're crazy.
Yeah. $1,000 for video cameras used to cost that much.
Oh, like, no, they did. Yeah, no, they totally did. I'm just saying, like the size of the TV they get, it was like $600 TV. Like
it was like a 19-inch or a 21-inch or something. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it had this like 13-inch Hitachi TV, and I think it cost like $300. Like when I was a kid, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like a high-end, like little 13-inch TV. No one will buy a 13-inch TV anymore these days. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
smaller than a computer screen.
Yeah.
That's basically an iPad Pro. You know what I mean?
Basically.
And
big almost these days.
Yeah. So like after they get in this little bit of an argument, the guy is kind of an asshole. The salesman's like, oh, well, you want to talk about the expensive stuff, and then you just want to go take a $50 TV. Just give me my money and get out, and this and that. And basically, it turns into a little bit of a brawl, and Otis does get involved in the brawl, but Henry ain't gonna just fight it out. So they end up killing the guy, and it's the scene that a lot of the critics did say it went too far, like violence wise, like it didn't need to be that way. It's not even that bad.
It's not bad. I actually really liked the way the scene went personally. I thought it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was shot well. Yeah. It was realistic,
Like Otis stabs him with a soldering iron because the guy is some sort of like he fixes stuff and whatnot. It's not
Yeah.
just complete garbage. I mean, I guess he gets like broken stuff or whatever. Stabs him with a soldering iron, and it burns him, and he also stabs him, and he sees the pain in the guy, and you see something click in Otis when it happens, like the way they did the scene, and then he starts stabbing him again, and he sees the
Yep.
pain, and then again, and then he just goes ham with the stab. You know what I mean? He gets a couple of them real fast in a row. He realizes how painful it is, and almost like the agony triggered something in his brain while he was doing it. There was almost this torture thing to him, you know?
And it seems like it wasn't something that Otis has experienced.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
he had sexually molested his sister when they were younger, or he would, like, you know, do things like of that nature, but it never made it to the point of taking one's life.
So they showed Otis, not Otis, sorry. They showed Henry. They showed him kill a bunch of women. You know, he killed a bunch of men and whatnot, but he just kind of killed people quickly. You know, he shot them, stabbed them, strangled them, but he never really tortured someone. It seemed, and it seemed like that triggered something in his head when he stabbing that guy with the soldering iron. It was almost like a torture, and he seemed to like it a little bit. It was cool how they did the scene, because then Otis strangles the guy, and he tells Otis to stop. And this is what I really love about the kill in this scene.
Yeah.
They take that little $50 TV and he just smashes it over his head, and it actually looks like they really smashed it over this guy's head. Like, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it almost wouldn't surprise me if they kind of made some sugar glass over that thing, and really,
I bet they did it.
Maybe hollowed out the inside a little bit and really broke that over that guy's head. Like, it wouldn't surprise me.
They could have easily got a small TV, took out the insides, put some foam rubber and some foam in there, put the sugar glass on, and even they could have put some blood packs in the TV. So they would burst as soon as it hit.
Yeah.
Because you can't really hide that on someone's head.
No,
you know
no,
what
no.
I mean?
No,
See, this is where Gore would come in, because she's into special effects a lot with makeup and stuff, and she would be able to pick that apart and be like, "Oh yeah, this is what they did." You know what I mean? But
oh, definitely.
Basically,
it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, but basically, I guess that's something of what they did.
Yeah, and then just the kicker to it, he tells them to plug it in, and then it like kind of electrocutes him for a second, and then you see the big poof and a little fireball, and it's I don't know.
It's comical.
Sick
it
bastardness laughed when it happened. Like, it was comical to me. I guess, I'm a little desensitized. You know, that's one of the things we talk about in a lot of these videos at this point in my life. I think some of that stuff is funny.
I think a lot of good horror directors and writers know that horror fans like comedy, you know, and they put in these little morbid sense of humor kind of stuff, knowing that it's going to add more to the movie, you know,
I agree. No, I was just saying, I agree, but in 1986, I don't know if they were going, like, I don't know if they wrote that to be funny.
No. I'm not saying they did. But
gotcha.
You could see how a lot of how like the horror community has grown. That movies include a lot of that stuff, and even later, you know, Friday the 13th and Child's Play and Nightmare. A lot of them got based on like these little like slapstick comedy type of, you know, one-liners and zingers and all that bull. You know.
Later on,
Yep. So after this, they skip to a scene. I guess they're talking about how Henry has to pretty much teach Otis the basics of being a serial killer. You can use a gun, but you can't use the same gun twice. You know, you don't always want to use the same way of killing. Sometimes you want to stab them. Sometimes you want to strangle them. Sometimes you want to shoot them. And he said, and it makes it very difficult. Now, this is 1985, but it makes it very difficult for cops to be able to link all these together. And technically, it's the same today. If the victims have no connection to each other and they're all done in differently and they're all in different parts of the country, what do you have to tie them together?
Absolutely nothing except for the sloppy fingerprints and DNA that he was leaving all over everything.
Yeah, nowadays.
But then it was a little harder. But honestly, though, if they still had all that stuff, evidence, if we were looking at this as if it was a real case, you know, a lot of that still would have been kept, and hopefully it was kept in good condition. He would have been caught later on if he wasn't dead already.
Absolutely. So when they leave the TV place, they actually take the camcorder and the nice TV and they go home. And they're doing this little family recording at the house. So it's like Henry's holding the camera and like, the girl, I just had her name and I haven't said it and I forgot, where was it? Becky. That's what it was.
So Tom Towles is Otis and...
Yeah, Tom Towles is Otis.
Becky is...
Tracy.
Tracy Arnold, yeah, sorry.
Yep.
Just covering bases again.
So...
Yeah.
Like Becky, she's like dancing on camera and waving, and then Otis is there. And he kind of like, he's like, "Hey, how are you?" And then Otis takes the camera, and Henry starts dancing with Becky, and then like she kisses him and stuff. So like it's like this fucked up little home movie, but only the two guys know how it's fucked up. Like Becky thinks it's like, "Oh, we're making memories. It's so magical."
Yeah.
And, like,
well, you also see that side of Otis coming back out though, because he's telling him, "Do more, go." He's like egging him on and egging her on.
Yeah, he pretty much wants to see a porno in front. Yeah, that's what the video camera is for. Look, if you had a video camera in the 80s, unless you were doing like home movies, you're doing porn, basically. So they had this conversation of, how to be a serial killer. And, they had that little moment. Well, there's a moment where Otis is going to sell some pot to like a high school guy, probably a senior, not like a 10-year-old boy, but
he's like the jock guy, like rich
maybe
jock.
Like maybe a senior, you know what I mean, something like that. And while he's in the car, he asks if he wants a spark up, so Henry lights one up. He gives it to him, and while he's smoking, he puts his hand on the inside of the kid's thigh, and the kid just reaches over, punches him like square in the face, and runs off. Henry's all Otis is all like boo-hoo. Yeah, Otis. Yeah, I said Henry, and I said not Henry, and then I said Henry. Yeah, and Otis is all mad, and he's talking to Henry afterward, and he's like, "I want to kill that kid," and blah blah. And Henry says like straight up, "You can't kill that kid. I want to. You can't, because you've been seen together. There's too much tying you together." And Otis says, "Well, I want to kill someone." And Henry's like, "That's the spirit." So,
well, basically, Henry's just being his murder guru right now. Like he sort of seems happy that he gets to like kind of teach his way to someone, which is another, like, Otis's character is kind of evolving as the movie goes on, and he has all this knowledge, because who knows, like, they don't tell us how long he's been getting away with this for. Like, it could very well be like 10, 15 years now with his age. I mean, I'm assuming he's supposed to be in his 30s, I assume.
They did say that he got released a year prior to that he's been out for about a year.
Yeah, but they don't tell you how long he was in jail for.
Right, or...
You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, no, he was... All right, so wait. He went to jail for the killing of the mother and the boyfriend, but he was a youth. So he could have easily...
Oh, see, I missed all that. Okay.
But he could have easily done a couple years and got out and got in trouble for something else and went back to jail.
Yeah, I guess that is true, yeah. I just missed that they said specifically that it was the mother kill that is what he got out of jail for, so I guess, he could have been in jail that whole time.
Right, or he could have only been in for a few years, but they said that he was at least out for a year. But still,
that I picked up on, yeah.
At that rate of how he's been killing people, I mean, that body count after a year is crazy.
He could very well be the largest serial killer in movie history.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, by far.
And that's one movie. So we could... So, Otis is like, "Well, I want to kill someone," and Henry's like, "All right, let's go." And they go for a ride, and they drive under this bridge, and they park their car, and they pop the hood, and Henry goes and stands out on the road, and he's trying to wave someone down to get help with the car trouble. Finally, they get someone to pull over, and the guy gets out of the car. He's like, "You guys need help with the car?" And Henry's like, "I don't know, Otis, do you need help with this?" And Otis just pulls out the gun, shoots him twice in the midsection, and then give him a headshot and they stood there for like way longer than you would expect someone who just killed someone in broad daylight. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
like,
they just
well, I don't know if anyone's familiar. I'm not familiar, but I mean, we did briefly. I'm pretty sure I mentioned this takes place in Chicago in the beginning.
yes,
And they're in this like weird, crazy underpass. It's almost like a subway for cars. It's like this whole underground substructure where they're at.
yep.
You know, it's like really weird. So, I mean, obviously nowadays there'd probably be cameras there, but there's nothing under there. It's deserted. There's a car here and there. But they were out in the open, but at the same time they were concealed. If you get what I'm saying by that,
Right. It's basically the same as
Yeah.
if they pulled into a back alley where there
Yeah.
wasn't any traffic, even though there was tons of people within like a 500-foot or 1,000-foot radius. There was just nobody there at that time. So after they kill this guy, the scene goes to them being back at the house, and they're watching a video. And the video is something they recorded where they'd broke into a house and they tied up the dad, and Otis is molesting the mother, and their son walks in the door, and he tries to run out the door, and Henry catches him, gets him on the ground. They're wrestling and stuff.
did he try to run out
And-
the door? I thought he actually attacked Henry. I thought he was dumb.
No, he tried to, like, he saw what was going on. And he tried to turn around back to the door, and Henry drug him like back towards like the living room area, because that's how they ended up back
Yeah,
in frame.
I see,
Because-
like, the way I saw it, I could be wrong. I thought he went at Henry, hit him, Henry fell back, and then Henry grabbed him and drug him down to the ground. I might have missed the part there.
No, because
but, yeah.
so the scene is shot as if he set the video camera down. 'Cause
Yeah,
Henry
yeah.
was holding the camera. He set it down and he ran after the kid like he was going out
Yeah.
the door. And that's how he grabbed a hold of him, and they ended up back in the living room because like he kind of like drug him and they both fell down because the kid did put up a fight. But Henry pretty much got the one up on him, broke his neck, and then Otis broke the neck of the woman that he was trying to sexually assault. And then you see Henry moving over to the father to finish off the job. But while that's happening, Otis is making out with and still groping and molesting the now deceased woman. So I think Otis had the most character development in this movie. More so than Henry, more so than Becky.
Agreed. He had this huge arc. I mean, he went from
Yeah.
just being like a lowly drug dealer, that got, hookers and drinking and whatnot, to basically trying to commit, necrophilia. Like-
Yeah, killing people, necrophilia. I mean,
Like,
it's a very quick turn.
Yeah.
And this, I will say this, from this point on, the movie does feel paced much better. But the small things leading up to this, I feel those scenes drug compared to the third act. The third act was like full force, let's go. But then it was almost over in an instant. You know what I mean?
well, I know what I don't think it drugged. I think it was the natural pace of the movie sped up just a little bit, but I think it matched their relationship. You can tell Henry was getting tired of Otis now at this point in time. He was getting annoyed by
Yeah.
his hijinks. If he just kept just being normal per se in Henry's world, things would have been fine. If this was like
But-
a real life scenario case.
Right. But Otis kind of went off the deep end after killing
Yeah.
people and seeing what they were getting away with. It's basically like if you teach a kid a magic trick and he's so excited that he'll show everybody, and he tries to show you the same trick 10 times. And it's like, dude, like, you showed me this already,
Yeah,
but he's still excited about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would try to compare it more to drugs. It was almost like a drug to Otis. You know what I mean? Where some people can just do a line of coke or just smoke like one like one hit or two hits. You know what I mean? And then there's Otis, who had to do the whole 8-ball.
But see,
smoke
but the
the
thing
whole
is,
ounce,
it wasn't.
like, and it was in,
but it
in
wasn't
excess.
gradual though. But it wasn't gradual. It wasn't like he did a line and then 2 weeks later he did a line and a couple key bumps. He like literally went from nothing to
Oh
straight
no, that's what I
8-ball.
mean. Some people are like that though. I know I've met people that have done that. Like literally, like Otis had his one kill, and then the next time it was like a little whatever, and then it was just floodgates open. You know what I mean? Well, actually, technically, he didn't have to kill the first time.
Right, but
the hookers, the prostitutes were killed by Henry, and then he had his first kill, and then there was this one.
well, I
It
would
just
I would
exploded.
say he helped with the television repairman kill, but he
Yeah.
killed the guy in the underpass.
Yeah,
And I think-
kinda
and then
skipped
from
over the
that
television
point-
guy, yeah.
When he actually took someone's life with, even though it was like a gunshot, like at that point it's like, okay, now it's full balls to the wall. And I think Henry pretty much realizes like, this guy's going to fuck my shit up.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
actually had this
Yeah.
argument in the car when Otis is hanging out the window trying
Mm-hmm.
to film women as they drive by, and
Yeah.
I guess Henry gets close to a car and the camera hits a parked car and they
Well,
drop it,
it's
or
because
it
Otis is
breaks
going
in his
crazy. He's
hand.
like, let's go follow that one. Let's go follow this one. Oh, she's perfect. She's this. Like, he's
Yep.
like freaking out because, yeah, you're right. He helped ish with the prostitutes. He definitely helped with the black market
The
dealer
TV
guy,
repair.
the TV.
Yep.
But once he had that one kill with the gun, the next one he just went overboard.
On
That's
his
what I mean. He
own.
was just like, he was full on in, like, too
Yep.
much. You know what I mean? There's just, that's why I compared
And
it to the way I did. It was like, you know, he did like one line, and then next time he did like the whole eight
Right.
ball. You know what I mean? Like, he's just,
But like, Henry had the smallest amount of self-control. Maybe not in the moment of killing, but everything in his life leading up to those moments, he had control. He was a chameleon. People never really thought of him as, you know what I mean?
well, yeah. Well, they show the way he, like, when he killed people in the beginning. It's like he just killed people at his leisure and when he wanted to. It's not like he felt like he had to go running out that house right that second to go kill people like Otis did. You know what I mean?
Right. So they get in this argument about the damn camera, and he tells Otis, you know, get out of the car. And he's like, I'll see you later. And Henry's like, yeah, whatever, I'll see you later. And also in this time, Becky had made the realization that she's going to quit her job and go back home with her daughter and live with her mom. So Henry makes it back to the apartment first, and he's talking to Becky, and he pretty much says, she pretty much tells him, hey, I want to leave. I want to go be with my daughter. I want to live with my mom again. You know, would you want to come? She's like, I'm not, you know, I need to know yes or no. And Henry's like, look, I got to think about it. I can't just go. He's like, let's go out and have a steak dinner or whatever. She tries, like, you know, to convince him then and there. But he's like, look, I got to go get a pack of smokes. Do you need anything? So he's out and about, and you can tell, like, this is actually really good acting on Michael Rooker's part, because you've seen him do all this fucked up shit in this movie, but you can tell he's having this existential dilemma of, like, he knew he was going to be on the road again soon, but now he has the option of this girl who loves him, and she wants him to go, and he doesn't know what to do. And he's out taking a walk, and he actually runs into this lady walking her dog and has, like, a conversation. And, like, just the way the movie is paced, you're thinking, oh, he's just gonna kill
It
her.
was a
He's got to get this.
super awkward conversation at that.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like,
He was
the
super
tone
off
of
when
it
he
was
went to
like,
talk to her. He was very off at that. You could tell, like, he was pondering things in his mind. He wasn't his normal
and
self.
I think they did that purposely to trick us into thinking
Yeah.
that he was just gonna go after. But she walked down an alley, and he kind of followed her, and then, like, he stopped, and dude, he goes to the gas station and he gets the 2 packs of cigarettes. He's like, oh, thanks, man. And the guy behind the counter's like, hey, how about them bears? And he goes, fuck the bears. Dude,
The guy's
I
like,
laughed
all
out.
right.
Yeah, like, whatever. But, like, just the way he's like, fuck the bears. I'm like, what? That's perfect. Like, that should be, like, the meme from that movie, you know. But he makes it back to the apartment, and he sees Otis. Well, Otis is raping Becky, his younger sister. And you see these shots of Henry walking up the stairs. You can kind of hear the screaming in the apartment. He's getting the keys out of his pocket and stuff.
They're setting the tension up, basically, like, with the whole scene. Like, it's getting worse and worse as it goes on, as he's walking up, too.
Right. How far is it going to go before he discovers? But also, and I know this is weird, but I had this thought, or like, how is he going to react to this? Because on one hand, like, who's Becky to him? Yeah, it's a girl that's nice to him, and they met, and they, they like each other and stuff, and he might go with her. But then Otis and him have been out killing people and, doing all this and that. So, like, how is he going to react to seeing this? And basically he reacts the same way he did the first time. He opens the door, he sees Otis on her, and he dives on him. He starts hitting him. Otis gets the upper hand by hitting him in the head with the bottle, and he actually puts a gun to his chest, and he says something like, prepare to, it's one of those lines. And Becky, with the save, I think she grabbed the sharp end of a comb, and drove it into Otis's eye. And the effect, it looked cheesy. You could tell it was a fake head, but it was only on screen for a split second.
Yeah, you could tell it was a fake head, but the after effect after that was pretty good.
Yeah, you could tell they did good makeup on him. He's like in the corner, he's screaming, he's cowering, and this and that. And Henry gets his wits back about him, grabs the same comb, and he just stabs him a few times, and he drives it in him, and he's like really holding it until he stops moving, and Otis is dead. And
now, see,
Becky's freaking out
when they were walking up, or like when he was walking up, and you were talking about how you were thinking he might be conflicted because of how worn he was on Henry. I didn't think there was any conflicting. Plus, the
on
fact
Otis,
that he was yeah. I didn't think Henry had any confliction in his head about what he was going to do to Otis, because especially with him raping his sister and how he wasn't going to deal with that, even though he'd been doing all this stuff with him. I think he still had this whole moral thing with what his parents did to him, or his mom, I mean.
Right. See, I just know from the time period in the beginning when Otis tried to kiss his sister compared to this, him and Otis had gotten into a lot more personal stuff,
I agree, but for some reason the whole situation, like, I'm just like, oh, this is going to be epic. Like, he's just going to, like, murder this dude so bad. You know what I mean? I thought he was going to...
Right.
And he sort of did, but he was actually... The way they did it was actually kind of cool because they made him sort of losing the fight, per se, a little bit.
Yeah.
And Becky saved them.
Yeah, and it's cool because, like, so after the death, Becky's freaking out. What are we going to do? And he's like, look, calm down and shut up. And he goes in the tool closet and he grabs something. And he drags the body in the bathroom. Now, for the first minute of this scene, I watched this with the subtitles on. So all you see is this panning zoom on Becky's face, crying and getting more intense, but you hear the saw, the hand saw, the hacksaw. And it cuts to the bathroom, and he's in the bathtub. Otis's body, his upper body is in the bathtub, and you see him stop cutting, and he picks up his head and he puts it in a trash bag, and then he goes right back to cutting. And skip to a scene, you see Henry and Becky with, like, their packed luggage, like a big suitcase and stuff. They go out to the car, they put it in there, and they drive off. And they share the scene on the road, like, what are we going to do, this and that. And, Henry, he's, like, reassuring to her. He's like, look, this is how it has to be. My sister has a ranch out in California, and we can go there and lay low, and everything will be fine. And, after a couple months, we'll send for your daughter. You know what I mean? So, like, he's making it sound like, look, we're in this together, and everything's fine, and this and that. And they pull over on a bridge, and he throws out the remains, get back in the car, make it to a hotel. And then the next morning comes. And you see Henry walk out of the hotel room. He's got a big thing of luggage, puts it in the car, closes the door, gets in. Now you think to yourself, well, okay, did he kill Becky in there? Or was she already in the car? Like, is the next scene going to be, him in the car and she's sleeping? Or, like, what's going on?
Yeah, I didn't even think that, because I was just, they just made it seem like, oh, they just went to the hotel, went to bed. They're just gonna pick up with their drive. It didn't even like dawn on me. Did he murder her because they were getting along? I did contemplate a little bit
Yeah,
when he
just
was
that slight
driving.
thought.
If she did not freak out, maybe like things would be fine per se. Like, you know what I mean? Well, you
I
don't know
think-
anything happened yet, but you know, I'm just like, I
Right,
didn't
right.
think he killed her at this point in time yet. It actually kind of caught me by surprise.
And here's the thing, like I felt like they could have easily cut to a scene from the windshield where he's driving and she's sleeping, but you didn't see her come out the hotel room because she was already in the car and she fell back asleep or whatever. Because that's what the movie was like moving towards, like
Yeah.
their relationship and all that. But then the next scene, the car pulls over, and remember, he already disposed of Otis's body, and he goes out to the trunk and he pulls out this big suitcase. It's stuffed.
Yeah, it's
and
Becky's
it's got
suitcase,
some blood
that
on
big
it.
massive suitcase
Yeah.
that's set up in the beginning of the
Yeah,
the whole
it's
of the whole
the-
movie. Yeah,
The massive, big, thick suitcase, and he just puts it on the side of the road.
and you see him struggling
drives
too,
off.
though. It was a little more than him just pulling it out. Like he struggled with it, and you're like,
No, yeah, it is a massive suitcase.
Oh, like that whole moment. That's like,
Well,
I
the
know
blood
what he
is
did
what
right
sold
now.
it for me.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
seeing
I mean you
blood
see the
on
blood
that-
too, but at the same time you're like, oh, he's struggling to pull his suitcase up, and then you see the blood. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they do a slow
Yeah.
pan zoom.
Yeah.
And that's the last scene of the movie. And that's how it ends. Now, there was a sequel 12 years later. It's hot garbage, and we're not even going to talk about it, except for right there. But that was Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. So, basically, that was the synopsis of the two movies that we chose this week. And just by the description alone, you can probably tell why we picked these two films. Both serial killer movies from the 80s that revolve around the main character being the actual serial killer. But the reason I wanted to bring this up, and it's probably the most glaring argument, at least in my opinion, is Maniac was completely hated by critics when it came out, and it was protested from different organizations and stuff like that, mostly feminist stuff, where Henry came out with a smaller budget, a smaller release, and critics loved it. Absolutely loved it. The same guy, Gene Siskel, the same guy who said after the shotgun scene in Maniac, he walked out of the theater, gave Henry 2 thumbs up. So, my question is why?
Now, me personally, I think to a certain extent it's a no-brainer why they didn't like it, but you can argue other things. But the way Maniac was shot, especially being 6 years earlier, and the amount of gore, Henry didn't have gore like that. You know what I mean? Like Maniac was almost over the top in a way, even to, I wouldn't say today's standards, but maybe like 10 or 15 years ago. You know, there are movies, you know, like Evil Dead and Dead Alive and stuff that really
Right.
push the gore limits. But I mean, for your average movie about like a serial killer or whatnot, Maniac was relevant with its use of amount of gore and stuff for like a good 30 years or so, I'd say.
But now let me say this. Henry had more sensitive subject matter. When
It did.
When
And-
you see
and I
Otis molesting women and like choking them out and stuff like that, like yes, the kills in Maniac were more violent or more gruesome, but the realism, the offensiveness of Henry was way more prevalent.
We have a really twisted, messed up society in the way of the way we look at violence and sex and stuff, which doesn't 100% fall into comparing these movies per se, but the way Henry, it was more of a psychological, and yeah, they hinted at a lot of overtones, and they kind of eased you into a lot of the stuff in Henry with the killing and the raping and stuff like that. And even then, when those scenes were there, they weren't that graphic to standards. You know what I mean? Like,
I feel like they started off the first scenes of the movies with dead women. You know what I mean? Like naked dead
but
women.
they weren't. It wasn't like
Yeah.
it wasn't like Maniac where you saw the killing. Like you didn't actually see anything.
No.
You just saw the photos of the aftermath, and they weren't even that gory. The photos.
No, it's not about gore though. It's about the subject matter. So like if you're saying that the only thing that separated Henry from Maniac, of why critics didn't like it, was blood, you know, I think that their argument would fall apart because everyone would pick up on that.
It's not just blood. It's the fact of like seeing it actually happen and the blood. It's one thing of seeing something happen and it being graphic, and there's another thing of seeing it happen and it being like overly bad seeing it happen, and then you add this massive gore aspect to it.
But see, I think
there was also now 6 years in between
that's
Maniac and Henry,
right?
Of gory stuff in between.
Yes, and that's
but
my only argument.
In general, yeah, no, but Henry in general though was still in a lot of ways tamer than Maniac, but in some ways it was worse. But like I said, the way we view things as a society, when you compare the movies, the worst things in Henry were kind of played down in a way due to,
I think,
maybe
after
desensitization.
After 6 years of having movies like Driller Killer, Friday the 13th, Sleepaway Camp, Texas Chainsaw sequel, which was a little more comedic, Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, after having all these...
We had the Evil Dead movies out then also.
Right, and then after having all these movies come out in a time period, but the thing is, critics were seeing those movies and they were still giving them shitty reviews. They said that... they said that Friday the 13th was just a pointless gore fest, and they said that this certain horror movie. So I'm gonna tell you why I think, in my opinion, that the critics gave Henry such good praise. Where was it shot, or where did it take place?
Chicago.
And who were the biggest film critics of the time back then?
Oh, do you think Siskel and Ebert are based out of Chicago?
And they are based out of Chicago. And it premiered at the Chicago International Film Festival. And they saw the world premiere. And they saw it with other people. It wasn't a private screening. And I think they saw how people reacted to the movie. And they knew their credibility would have gone out the window if they said that this movie was a piece of shit when everybody else around them in the audience liked the movie. So I feel...
It's a possibility.
I feel that they said, look, times are changing, and we got to be a little bit more open about the things that we review and how we review them. And basically, this is the new trend, and we got to hop on board. And I feel like that's what they did. Unfortunately, with their criticism on Maniac, now Maniac had a higher budget and it made way more money. So you would think with a higher budget, it would be shot better special effects, better production. And then you would, like I said, you would also think with it making so much money that it would make a sequel or whatever. But because of what the critics said and the backlash it received when it came out, obviously 1980, that hope was killed. And then after a few years of over-the-top horror movies, that Henry actually felt somewhat tame in comparison.
They also, if you look at the IMDb page for Henry, it also, they call it like almost like a document. It's like a
docu series or something.
Yeah. So, where I think they kind of look at Maniac more as a slasher flick.
Yeah, that's
how
fair.
we kind of towed the line of that, and they still hated on slasher films and other stuff to this day. To
this day,
he's dead now, but
no, they're both dead now.
Oh, they're both dead now.
Yeah,
yes. Like they hated on those types of flicks regardless. whatnot. They never really sold out to that point. But I think Henry, the way it was filmed and the slowness of it, the pacing, the not showing as much at first and easing you in, and it's still not being over the top gory, with the exception of the kill with the TV. That was, you know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
right.
It wasn't.
It had its moments.
Even the eye stabbing scene. Like if Tom Savini did that, it would be a lot more to it.
Right, right.
Than it was. It would look a little better, look a little more real.
Yep.
I think they're hypocrites in a lot of ways, but at the same time, I think that movie got looked at a little different. The acting was a little better in this movie, by far. Like everyone,
that I think Henry had more of a focus on multiple characters, and they each did what they had to do. Whereas with Maniac, Joe Spinell is a heavyweight working with a bunch of amateur hour, stand-up comedian type. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, Henry did have better acting because it had more even-based actors. Even though they were new actors, they were better than what was on Maniac.
Yeah, but you're only as strong as your weakest link in that sense. It doesn't matter how much of a heavyweight he was. You surround them with trash, you're going to get trash.
Right, even though
at the end, no matter how good he was. But
even
with Henry, everyone was on the same level.
But
you know what I mean? They all did a good job, the three people.
Maniac had a good director, it had good special effects, it had a decent producer, it had good music, and it had a heavyweight actor. But because you don't ever see the director or see the producer, they're not, like, you see their work on screen, but you don't see them. They're not characters. I think that's why, Henry had the one up when it came to acting, because they actually had people, and like, regardless if it was their first movie or 50th, they had people who played the parts well.
Yeah, I feel Henry was also shot more like a real movie, which is what they saw in it too. It transitioned well. There wasn't a lot of like deadness in between scenes, which Maniac was really filmed like a slasher movie. It went from one kill scene to the next kill scene. There wasn't a lot of fluff in the middle until you hit the third act, and then there was a little bit there, and it felt like I said, it felt the pacing was off. It felt a little weird,
a little forced.
Still sort of but it still fit the movie at the same time, depending on how you look at it. Like we said, I think like I said, I think that's why with a lower budget, not as good special effects maybe and whatnot, while Henry was looked at as a better movie, because in a lot of ways it was.
I think
even though I personally think I like Maniac better to a certain extent, I don't know. I'm kind of torn.
And that's where I'm at. There's things I like about both movies. Like, Henry was shot on 16 millimeter, and back then you had like TV pilots that were being shot on better cameras than that. Because they didn't have the budget, they had to really rely on the actors, the set locations, the pacing. Maniac didn't have a massive budget, but they had a little bit more leeway when it came to the kills and the gore and stuff like that.
I know the film Gorilla Wise was also filmed in New York, regardless of whether they paid for. It was more expensive.
Absolutely.
More money in New York. Chicago is probably a little bit cheaper. Not that I'm saying, Chicago's a cheap town. I'm sure it's expensive there too, but everything is like way more expensive in New York.
No, absolutely. And I'm sure Joe Spinell gave himself a paycheck, even though he was like, really involved with the movie. I'm sure he paid himself a pretty nice paycheck to be in that movie. So even take out.
Could have been the film too. Could have been the cost of the film. Film cost an arm and a leg back then. I mean, I'm no film student, so I don't know what they filmed it on. I don't know if it's 36 millimeter or 32 millimeter, whatever it is, but there's a big jump from 16 millimeter film to 30 something, whatever they filmed it on. You know what I mean? Whatever the standard is.
32 and 33 would be the next one up.
There's a big jump in film. I mean, like 16 millimeters is just a jump up from 8 millimeters, which you can do with like a home camcorder back in the day, kids. You know what I mean? Like
8 millimeter is literally the basic little handy cam that everybody had growing up, and so I wanna bring up a couple things that I would like to bring up in every episode. I may not, depending on what we cover, but I'd like to at least talk about, could either one of these killers exist in real life. Yeah. Now, I believe with Maniac, David Berkowitz, that whole case, and when that happened, I believe Maniac directly ripped off. They could say loosely inspired by, but I believe it was like a direct comparison to The Son of Sam. When New York was actually setting a curfew to keep people safe. This entire city, New York is literally a massive, New York is literally a massive city, and they had a curfew because of one person wreaking havoc, going out in the middle of the night and killing people. He used a 44 revolver, not a shotgun or whatever, but still, even the look of Berkowitz, a kind of heavy-set, pudgy guy, you know what I mean? So I would definitely say someone like Maniac exists. Maybe not to the extent of like the hallucinations and the mannequins and the this and that, but as a killer, how he would kill the victims and stuff, I could see that.
Yeah, pretty generic. I mean, you could throw it out to a ton of different killers. Yeah, but I mean, the point of the question is, yes, I think both these guys could exist in real life.
So, and then basically,
without a doubt,
the roundabout question would be: has there ever been, or could there ever be copycat killers? And of course, you know, people would see this and they could easily replicate, you know, scenes from the movie or, you know, plot points or whatever. Like that's a given.
Yeah, I mean, I don't so much see copycats off this movie because it's so generic in a way, especially Henry. He's just a drifter that kills people in different ways. I mean, it's kind of like the textbook way to just kill people and get away with it. You know what I mean? There's nothing special about Henry. He's got no gimmick.
Right.
He's got no.
I'm
no
not saying
to him. He's just. I'm just saying as a copycat. There's no reason to go out and copycat Henry. And the same thing with Maniac. Like, he's a severely disturbed guy. Yes, you might get a copycat that might cut off scalps or
right
stuff, but not specifically copycatting the movie Maniac.
But I'm not referencing copycat in the way they kill. I'm talking about if somebody saw these movies and said, "Oh, you know what? Henry brought up a good point. You don't kill people the same way. You always keep moving." You know what I mean? Like, see, my big thing is I don't think the movie
common knowledge now, though.
Now,
maybe not.
Now,
sorry. I'm letting it out of the bag. No, it's kind of common knowledge. Sorry.
Well, but in 1986,
yeah,
you know, obviously a few years ago there was that guy who was inspired by Dexter, and he actually we covered him in our Serial Killers Academy episode of Wannabe Serial Killers. He only had one victim. The first victim he had got away, and the guy did not report him, but he had a kill room.
Well,
everything was in plastic.
Dexter, what was he killing a serial killer or
no,
a murderer, or is it just a bad dude?
It was a guy,
a random person.
He would pose as a woman on dating sites, and he would meet middle-aged single men who had disposable income and didn't have like family or anything like that. And he would try to lure them to his house, and his garage was all covered in plastic, and just to kill him. And
it's like he's mimicking Dexter, but he's not mimicking Dexter at the same time. You know what I mean?
No, he directly wrote. Yeah. He called it the kill room.
No. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah,
like he's
the reasoning,
mimicking like the kill room, but he's not mimicking Dexter per se. You know?
Yeah,
like,
he's not doing the same. The motive isn't the same.
Yeah,
but this guy was an idiot.
Dexter, but not mimicking Dexter.
Right.
At the same time.
And you know how some people just don't have it? Like, you got your one friend who's trying to be like a stand-up comedian, and you go see a show once in a while, but he's just like not good. And like, it's like, dude, like, really, man, like, I'm sure there's other stuff you're good at, but like, this isn't, you know. I feel like someone should have had to talk with this guy. Like, man, like, we know you want to kill people, but like, you're just not good at it, you know? Like,
wait, you never wrapped anyone up in saran wrap and put them in your garage? Oops, I'm sorry. That's too much.
What is this, amateur hour?
What is going on here? I'm going by. I'm failing Henry's rules already. I'm letting everyone know.
Well, you know what? Hey, you didn't hear it from us. So basically, that was our wrap up of Henry and Maniac, and a little bit of the remake of Maniac. No sequel of Henry because it is straight hot garbage. If you want to watch it out of curiosity, like you're into bad movies, then go check. Go torture yourself with that. But it's not even worth really talking about. I think we covered all the basics of these movies, and at least the questions that I had, or at least the opinions I thought I might have been alone with, at least I got a response from someone who has like a good head on their shoulders and has seen the movies and can make educated opinion, and you know what I mean.
I do. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So no, I'm just lighting a cigarette. So for next week's episode, we kind of have a couple things in the air. We haven't set anything in stone, but as soon as we do figure out the topic we're going with, we'll release it on our social medias and let everyone know what to be in store for. I know we did Gore's pick of the week, and I want to thank her again for that.
Yay, Gore. That was not sarcasm. That was a genuine excitement because I can't wait to actually hear that myself because I haven't heard it yet personally myself.
Yeah.
So.
And like it's past midnight. Like that's the amount of enthusiasm we can give anything right now. Just like, hey. Do you have a pick that you'd want to send out to the people?
What, for next week?
No, just in general.
For gaming?
Gaming, movie, music. I mean, if you could.
No, I think I went over that in the beginning. I went over those couple movies. They were good picks. I can rehash them again.
Yeah. I
can rehash them again. So I mean, if you want to stick to this type of movie, I mean, there's countless movies. I mean, you can classify to a certain extent Texas Chainsaw Massacre type movies. Like Wrong Turn or whatever. I know they're kind of monsters or mutants, but they're still people.
Yes.
They're still serial killers. Backwoods is like another crappy, all that. You have American Psycho, From Hell, Frailty, Otis, Murder Party, Strangeland. I mean, the list goes on. There's so many of these movies. I mean, you can loosely say Hostel, Saw, like to a certain extent. They're all crazed people in a way.
Right.
They're all serial killers. They're all real people. They're not like supernatural. They're not monsters.
But they're not slashers either. They're not.
Yeah, they're not slashers. Yeah.
So of all those,
That's
what would be the one?
Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of draws the line a little bit with that one.
Right.
But
so of
the
all
idea
those,
of the whole redneck family or whatever, you can do that as a serial killer. You know what I mean? They're not necessarily like a slasher. There's other movies out there that do it.
Well,
just bringing that up as an example.
That's the beauty of like the subgenres, because like you can have the rednecks. Well, are they deformed rednecks or are they just rednecks? Are they mutated from incest, or are they Hills Have Eyes kind of mutate? I mean, I love horror, but of all those movies, which one would you want people to go check out the most if they haven't?
I would say Frailty.
Okay.
Like Otis and Strangeland. Like I can't, like those are all really.
If people haven't
I'm
seen
sure
those.
a lot of people have seen Frailty. I mean, it's a father believes that Jesus is telling him to kill bad people, demons, and the kids struggle growing up. They're like real young and they kind of turn out to be, I don't want to give away, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
it's a really, really good movie. The way it's shot, it's like Henry, to the point of it's shot slow, but it's shot slow for a purpose, and it goes. You don't ever feel like you're bored,
Right.
Like there's some gore a little bit to it, but the story and the way it's done is very well done. Otis is a little more lighthearted. It's more about the gore and
A little more
serial
campy.
killer and people getting revenge in a way.
Right.
Like he's trapping women, making them do whatever. And then Strangeland is probably one of the more fucked up movies, especially when it came out.
Yeah.
D. Snyder playing Captain Howdy. He's basically pretending to be other people on the internet, and it came out at a time when the internet was. I mean, the internet's still new, but I mean, it was like new.
Yeah, like
So
AOL Instant
other
Messenger.
people,
Uh-huh.
yeah, picking them up offline and then torturing them and doing crazy shit. I mean, it's a classic of a movie. I mean, it holds up to a certain extent to this day, but the whole idea of it and how twisted it is, if you like the whole torture aspect of it,
Yeah.
of the crazed lunatic, you get into his head a little bit. It's not an amazing movie, but it's definitely worth a pick. Most people don't know about it. It's worth a watch at least once.
Yeah, I would agree. Now, going through some of my old collection, if you want an 80s camp fest type of movie that a lot of people haven't seen, I would recommend Night of the Creeps. It is a fun walkthrough of a movie. It doesn't really drag, but you gotta like your 80s camp horror movie. Now, if you want to sit through a complete schlock fest, shot on Shitio, how did this thing get made? I have 3 words for you: blood-sucking Nazi zombies. See, I like to
I don't know
torture.
if I ever heard of that one, but Night of the Creeps is definitely a good choice, though. That's a good movie. It's I think it's campy and it's cheesy, but it's actually a good movie.
Yes.
But I've never heard of the other one. I actually thought you were going to say blood-sucking redneck vampire or zombies. I forget what it is.
Oh, no.
I mean, I guess it's like such a similar,
Yeah. No, actually, Redneck Zombies is another good, like, real shitty. See, I like watching the movies where it's like you laugh at how bad they are, and there's a few newer ones that are like that, like Thanksgiving and stuff like that, But
Thanksgiving.
I know, I know. But listen, it's fun to sit down with friends and you watch and you have a good laugh and stuff. So blood-sucking Nazi zombies, it's on YouTube, I think, the entire thing. So if you just want to, torture yourself for about an hour, I think it's like 70 minutes, I don't know. Go ahead and check that one out. Other than that, just stay tuned to the social media accounts. Check us out on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram. Hit us up on Patreon for more exclusive content. You got to check out Wolfman's Twitch, and we're going to have links on Facebook so you can actually check it out Wednesday. We'll get that poll put
go to our
up.
Facebook and leave some love, leave some comments, give us something to bring into these podcasts where we're going to interact with you guys a little bit,
Yeah, and recommendations, comments, even just comments on like, oh, well, I agreed with your thought on this movie, but I don't think it's like that. You know what I mean? Like, we welcome any and all conversation. Seriously.
I want to hear from everyone. I want to know what they think of our opinions and what your opinion is also.
Yeah. And if you haven't seen Maniac or Henry, stop what you're doing now, get yourself Amazon Prime, and go check it. They're both on Amazon Prime, and you've got to. You owe it to your country.
You owe it to your blood-sucking inner redneck zombie Nazi to see it.
I was gonna say you owe it to your inner Nazi. Wait a second.
Yeah.
Oh, so hey.
No, I was just trying to name every stupid concept, your inner redneck, blood-sucking Nazi zombie, rabid granny, Thanksgiving turkey,
Weasel,
mask-wearing freak of a self.
Yeah. Oh, there's another one. Weasels Rip My Flesh. Filmed in the 70s by a 16-year-old, starring his buddies and his family, made with papier-mâché radioactive weasels.
Wow.
Weasels Rip.
I think that might have to go on to like an animal attacks podcast episode where we do like.
I cannot wait till we do
like
the animal
zombievers and
Birdemic
and Black Sheep, not the one with Chris Farley.
Yeah, no. Sharknado maybe. Well, it's not really a horror movie. I don't know.
No,
I'm not a fan of,
yeah.
a lot of people like those sci-fi movies. I never really liked them.
Some of them are actually better because there's two versions of them. There's a sci-fi version that you see on TV, and they used to actually have an uncut, unedited versions that you can get on DVD.
Okay.
That made them a lot better because they cut a lot of stuff out and they shortened films for TV time.
You know
'Cause
what?
I know there's one specifically that I had and I had seen, and it's different than the version on TV. It was called Jolly Roger,
Okay.
and it was basically a ghost pirate zombie person that was like haunting this small town. It has something to do with the founder killed. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
back
yeah,
in the piratey days. And
Yeah,
whatnot.
yeah, yeah. Your
But
basic
the movie
ghost
was a lot
story.
different. There was boobs and more gore and you know what I mean. Like, not that it was a great movie on the DVD, but it was definitely a lot different than the version of it they showed on TV. Even which it was just kind of weird for sci-fi because usually they just blur stuff out.
Yeah,
But it was just straight up cut out.
we should actually maybe one day do an episode on unlikely decent movies, or made for TV decent movie. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure there's some out there.
Oh well, I mean, Alien Apocalypse I think was a sci-fi movie. It had Bruce Campbell in it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was actually good though. I mean, it was cheesy. I mean, they do exist, but yeah, I know like majority of them now just kind of sucked. I mean, a lot of those sci-fi movies now. There was that one company for the longest time when they release a movie, they would release it and it would come out like say that Snakes on a Plane came out. Then this company would at least write the video Snakes on a Train.
Yeah.
Then Transformers came out. Then they had Transmorphers and it
Illumination
actually pretty much had nothing to do.
The company's Illumination. When Suicide Squad came out, I went to Walmart and I saw one called Suicide Club, and it had your rip-off Joker. They
A lot of those movies make it on the sci-fi, and they're just terrible. They're god awful.
We're gonna have
nothing to do with what they're trying to rip off either.
No, we're gonna have to get a list together. But make sure you guys.
Endless.
Oh, I know. That's what's perfect about it. But make sure you guys check out the Facebook and the Instagram, all that stuff. The YouTube for sure. We have an episode up right now of last week's podcast, and there's some video and some slides, and there's some legitimately funny moments. Like, it's awesome. That was Wolfman's doing. I'm so glad that I got someone else who knows how to edit video. So like now we can both.
Yeah, it's no masterpiece. It's not like crazy, but there are some funny moments in it.
Yeah.
A lot of the moments are just me putting up stuff and whatnot, but I did try to add a little humor to it here and there, and it was just I just try to have a little fun with it.
Yeah.
Just while I had some spare time.
So make sure you go leave us some love on social media, and
Facebook. Make sure you take that poll. Let me know what we should play as a group for Wednesday.
Yeah, we'll put that.
We'll put a time down and everything, but it's most likely to be sometime after 8 p.m.
Right.
We'll just leave that as a general, but
we'll
get more exact time.
We'll try to get the
when it's
poll.
going to end. It might go till 2-3 o'clock in the morning because I set up pretty late. So if you
Right.
can't get on early, doesn't mean I won't be on.
Right, absolutely. And we're going to try having the poll up at least,
Yep.
the day of, early in the day, to give you time to give us counts and all that. So just make sure you check all that stuff out. And other than that,
I just want to also thank everyone for listening to this and watching our other one and showing us love and support while we figure this out, because it's still very new to both of us. You know what I mean? You have bumbling over words and missed facts and just nervousness and stuff. It really means a lot to us that you're here listening and watching and showing us love. So keep it up.
absolutely. And
It's
it
only
will.
going to get better. We can't go down from here. Just remember that. It can't go down. It's only going to get better.
Well, let's not jinx ourselves.
Yeah, well,
All right, guys. I'm Gray.
I'm Wolfman.
Until next time, stay alive.
Have a good one. Good night.